right, we are live. Good evening, morning, middle of the day, etc. To all the chess fans out there. It's been a long rest day, and Ding and Gukesh are back. Excuse me. With their fourth game. Whew. Excuse me. Ugh. We might have to keep the sound off and do an arrow-based commentary today in order not to hurt everybody with the sounds of sneezing. Good morning, Matt Chess and Quad X. I did have a good Thanksgiving, but it felt like I was waiting a long time for this game. It's true. A night's sleep seemed like a good idea. Let's quickly throw up a poll on Twitch since we can do it. What will Ding's first move be in game 4? So we got 1 e4 that he played last time, 1 d4, 1 c4, quite common for him. One knight f3, which is not very common for him, but he could do it. And we've got time for a 2-minute poll here instead of 1 minute. Let's throw that up. I've got up game 4 below me and the final position of game 3 for another minute here to my right. My thoughts on what is to come and what has been. I think that game 3 was very, very well played by Ding. By Gukesh. It was fine by Ding as well, actually, but I think it was very well played by Gukesh. I've looked at some other comments on the game since then, right? And one thing that I think is very important was, there's this position that we all said is... See if I can get it. Okay, there's this position that we all said is winning for white. Once we saw Kostya's move knight d4, covering knight f3, and maybe not losing this pawn on g5, and from this position on, Kostya, Jesse, and I were all agreed that white is winning, and other commentators were too. But we were saying that you have to play really, really precisely and correctly to win that position. And I looked at some other commentators on it, and I feel like that is true, justified and correct to say that it requires very, very precise moves to win from here. And I think that Gukesh played it basically... that's kind of crazy to say, even for a world champion, which he's not yet, right? But even for this level of competition. But I feel like he played it pretty much at an engine level. It was incredibly precise. Game is live. Knight f3 on move 1. Thank you. Good call, Numkey. Wow, they kicked off their first moves as fast as could be. Today they really got things going there. Knight f3 would not have been my prediction. I would have predicted d4. Knight f3, and then e3 on move 2, quote-unquote e3 poison. Hey, Michelle. Sorry about the nose thing. You're going to hear it potentially a lot. Common cold. Yeah, I think something like a common cold mixed with, not sleeping. So it be. It'd be nice to see what move they're on. Yeah, it would be. We'll try and get to it at some point. Knight f3 is a very flexible first move, and e3 is a pretty flexible second move still as well, although, it makes g3, bishop g2 less common, and it knocks out a lot of your best variations of the queen's gambit with c4, d4, bishop coming out. So I'd say e3 is not... Well, I mean, you can only stay flexible so long in chess, let's just say. Like, if he played c4 or g3, that would have been pretty committal as well. e3 is weird, yes, I would agree. Kostya plays it, but yeah, I think it's a bit weird. Well, Ding is, I think one thing that this does, I mean, Ding hasn't even bothered to check straight up what Gukesh is planning to play as a main defense, so to speak, to 1d4. Jesse thinks he wouldn't even have a main defense. He would just play some of everything at this, in this match, that he would just hit and run the whole way. But one of the things he's checking with this knight f3, e3 move order, wow, and b3 as well. One of the things he's checking with knight f3, e3 is like, what opening is Gukesh planning to play against the closed openings, and what move orders is he willing to play to get there, So what roads is he going to potentially take to get to the defense that he wants to play? Hey, Guillaume. Oh my god, I cannot breathe. And yeah, with the move b3 now played, that is a move which makes it less likely to have an early confrontation, right? This is maybe now a bit more committed. Wait, let me make sure I get the right Gukesh versus Ding window. Okay, I think this is the right one, right? So here he could have still played c4 on move 3, attacking d5, and we could still get more of like a maybe combative mainline d4 opening eventually. Once he's played b3, I think we're very likely to get some maneuvers, right? To have some of the pressure, the immediate pressure taken out of the opening. So far, it's exactly like White's playing the Queen's Indian. That's a good point, Michelle. It's exactly the Queen's Indian, minus Black having played c5 yet. It's a flexible development system, totally. I will try to add that in at some point. Yeah, I've got a few things I still want to add in here, just getting started. Alexa's saying that in his experience, this normally transposes to a kind of d4 position where both sides fianchetto. So b6, bishop b2, bishop b7, etc. And then at some point, White's going to add d4 and c4 to the board, and you'll get a sort of queen pawn game anyway. Just not any like really theoretical early variation of the Queen's Gambit, right? So, all right, let me grab a glass of water, a couple more tissue boxes, some cookies, and then we'll work on adding the human eval bar to the stream. All right, folks, what do you think? That was a brief taste of a new product we're working on, which is Chess Dojo, no engine, no human coverage. What did you think of that little bit? Should we do more of it? I think a King's Indian attack, Jacob, would have been with G3 and Bishop G2. So with B3, yeah, I don't think it could count as a King's Indian attack. Yeah. I'm sure the FIDE stream that shows the players has that sort of blank chessboard coverage beat, but anyway, it was just an attempt. It was just an attempt. Let's see, where should I put an eval bar here? If I were to place an eval bar, I think Bishop E2 has been played. Okay, very calm. So Gukesh plays what some people could call kind of like a London, but he doesn't commit to an early C5. So he's not going into any skirmishy variations of the Queen's Indian down a tempo. And Ding plays a very calm move in response. So he can be feeling somewhat safe at the moment. H6, he pays a tribute tempo early to preserve the bishop before playing E6, when potentially the plan would have been knight H4, garnering the bishop pair. So he pays a tempo on H6, and Ding blitzes out this unusual move and says too late for E6. Whoa. And we're probably already out of almost any mainline territory. So the idea is you play E6, he trades on F8, and then you have to rearrange the king and rook, which isn't so easy. Wow, he's really gotten Gukesh quickly into unusual territory without playing anything terrible. Normally, to get your opponent out of opening theory early in a game, you have to do something kind of bad. Lasse Sonneskak says that they see 5 games in the database in this position. 5 games. That is so few. I mean, that's very, very similar to 0. My first idea for black would be to go knight BD7. Sorry, what's up with this window? Okay. My first idea would be to go knight BD7, so that at some point when I move this pawn to E6, I could recapture on F8 with the knight. Or if white lets me, I might play E5 and be willing to recapture on F8 with the king in exchange for getting in the move E5. So that's my first thought for black here. Be knight BD7. Now let me get the eval bar in here. Slowly crawling across my screen. There's the eval bar. We need this word sensei eval on it. I'm not reading chat for a moment. Sorry, folks. Hang in there. I'm going to probably tuck this up here. Right above, or right beside my head. That's my first thought of where to put it. Okay, and next, what I want to do is, I want to take this live position, this board, we're going to do here, and what we're going to capture with this, very odd, you'll see in a second, is we're going to go over to the notation and just show the last move that's been made. Put it next to a live position. So whoa, what happened to this eval bar over here? Either eval bar got hosed. Sorry. Looks pretty good to me. I have to put my face very near my screen to see what I'm doing here. Okay, so I got Sensei Eval, I've got the match score. I wanted to switch this thing here. Go live position after, and we'll put it over here. Then here can see knight bd7 now. Okay, and we can see that it's move 5. Okay, I'm trying to grab this position here. It seems like I can't. Hang on. Just going to permit myself to make this a tiny bit bigger. That's all. Okay. Okay, so folks, the point of this was to have the human eval bar here, where we input our human evaluations, myself and anyone else who joins me on the show. And then down below the analysis board, we've got the match score, so you can see game 1, 2, 3, the results, the story of the match, the score at the most basic level. Below me, we've got the live position currently while I do whatever else I do on the analysis board, and you can see what move they're at. Let's see. What do folks say about the look? I think you're still a couple of pixels out. Yeah. If I keep changing stuff, I won't be going over the moves. Bishop at a3 is a chump. 94 ID on the last move for black. Okay, let's see. So Giri 2021 and Noterbek Musavi 2023, 2 games played here. So it was really strong players who searched for this unusual position. I was surprised by knight of 3. Yes, Mito. I'm up in the middle of the night. It's neither early nor late, just the middle of the night. I slept for 3 hours, got up to do this, and after this I'll go to bed for another 3 or 4 hours. Okay, so we've got a suggestion of knight e4 from someone in chat. They want to know what I think of the suggestion of knight e4 here. Knight bd7 was played by Gukesh after 7.5 minutes thought or so, which was my first thought. So chat asks, what about knight e4? Well, it seems like white can just kick you with d3, chat. I know, George, I know. I know that pixel thing was a joke. I was working on it. Oh, you wanted to go to d6, Asher? Oh. Total score is enough. Okay. I mean, I've got the space for it, so. So this is the idea, to be able to play e6 without trading the bishop. I guess it's possible. It is expending a fair amount of time as well, right? So, to be clear, after bishop a3, if you just play e6, you're just losing a little bit of time, right? You can go bishop takes, king takes, castles, king e7, right? c4, rook e8. White's not going to prevent you from tucking the king, right? So it's just going to cost you, 2 moves of tempo or something like that, right? So is this knight d6 thing less tempo costly, right? If we get into something like this where white tries to put a little pressure on the center, is it less tempo costly to have played knight e4, knight d6, and then bishop e7, etc.? It looks reasonable, but it is maybe a similar cost as the king f8 line. So it's not a bad idea by any measure. It's actually a little hard to count the tempi and be sure if it's a little bit better or worse, yeah? Isn't d3 a concession? D3 seems like a move white doesn't mind making. Like, it was going to come to D3 or D4 eventually, so it's not... Doesn't seem like a big concession to me. But I guess another question is, if we know that you're going to D6 anyway, maybe I should even ignore the knight and not play D3. Like, if I castled, what were you going to do, Asher? I feel like you might still play knight D6, huh? We've got moves coming in. Wow, Gukesh is reacting reasonably quickly to the unusual opening. Well, yeah, the idea of knight BD7 was to recapture like this. So has he gained or lost more time by doing this, right, compared to the other? If we go here, 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 castles. So let's ask ourselves, let's compare this, right, Asher, to the two other options we had. One was king f8, king e7. The other was knight e4, knight d6. I feel like Gukesh's choice leaves black closer to keeping up on time and development. Because if you look at this position that I have in my analysis, it would be white to move, but it's two knights and a bishop for each side, castles, castles for each side, one pawn in the center for each side. So I would say black has lost 0 tempi somehow so far. Which is amazing because he spent a tempo on h6. But he's basically just totally on time. Okay, let's see what happens. c4 has been played, and here it is Gukesh's turn. So maybe I might be miscounting this myself here, right, Asher? But my count suggests that Gukesh's response here is really quite good, quite acceptable. Like, it feels like he made the best choice. Hard as it is to decide something like that so early and so amorphous in the game, it actually feels like he did exactly the right thing. He brings the knight back to d7, and it feels like he's found the best option pretty quickly, you know? Kraai, I have nothing against discussing the topic you bring up, which was the question of how we decided who was quote-unquote American or something like that for the greatest American players stream. But I think most people are going to want me to talk about Ding and Gukesh today, right? So it's not me trying to avoid anything. But hopefully you're not too scared of us. I mean, we're not like wild racists, I guess. Just people talking about chess. And I'm happy to talk about it with you some other time if you are interested. I suppose Jesse can be mildly scary at times well, everybody can be scary at the wrong time, right? But we're not scary in like a Nazi style. All right. So knight bd7, and this seems to be the first moment where Ding is thinking for more than 2 or 3 minutes. Knight c3 is a simple choice, d3 or d4 choices. But the moment doesn't feel like he has any super special pressure on black, so he might be looking for a way to take over the dark squares with the pawn chain, like play d4 and consider playing c5 quickly. Might be one way to try and get a little tickle of something for white. No, I'm currently back in the U.S. I I came back in August. I was there for exactly 12 months, to the day, in fact. Yeah, Falgary, I think that Gukesh is extremely composed. I think by comparison, Kasparov at 22 was more emotional and less composed than Gukesh is at 18, which is a shocking thing to say because, you know, for a young man, I guess I'll call him, for a young man, the difference between 18 and 22 is actually quite a bit. You know, people will often progress or mature quite a lot during those years still, so... Kasparov, yeah, was always going to be an emotional guy. Is a good point, Tiger. But you know, Kasparov gained certainly some amount of maturity during that World Championship match with Karpov at age 22, and so, you know, there's elements of his chess that became very mature and stable during that match. You know, Gukesh seems very, very stable. I mean, I saw some comments he made about how badly he played in the first game, about Magnus commenting on the first game, and he was just like, yeah, I played a bad game, but, you know, I knew I might play a bad game early on. I knew that whether or not I played a bad game early on, after I played a couple games, I would get into the swing of things and just start feeling like I'm playing chess, and I expected that, you know, I could play well, you know, later on throughout the match, and now I have. That was kind of like what he said after game 3, and I was like, that is, in a sense, a lot of balance and calm for a player that young to have that kind of perspective on the ups and downs of your own chess player. You know, I think I was impressed. I think he seems really, really mature. More mature than a lot of people at age, you know, 30 or 40 would be even. So, yeah. Is Endgame Sensei ever coming back? I hope so, Urksor. I would love to do it. Especially, yeah, special World Championship episodes where we play out some of the endgames from this match. That would be a great idea. Okay, JD, a newbie. What structure is this? So at the moment, it's not 100% defined, JD, because white has not yet placed their D pawn, their queen pawn, in the middle of the board. Like, if white played D4, we would more or less have a queen's gambit structure. Right? Very typical. But if the pawn goes to D3, then it's a little bit more of like a formless or not fully defined structure, somewhere between an English and a Reti kind of structure. So, yeah, it's nothing totally settled just yet. As to the question of whether Kostya and I are pursuing the GM title, Kostya is, and I am not. Yeah. Knight c3 threatening CD. Never mind. Okay, yeah, knight c3 doesn't really threaten anything just yet, right? It puts the knight on a good pressuring square, but this pawn's already defended twice at the moment. So white doesn't have a ton of pressure here. And the bishop on e2 is pretty modest. So overall, the position is pretty modest. I, in fact, don't think that white even has as big an advantage as average, and I'm going to change my 0.15 eval to 0.05 at the moment. So just make a little update there on the Sensei evaluation there. So it was a cool little prep by Ding, but Gukesh seems to have solved it, to my mind. He solved it. Done. It cost him 19 minutes off the clock. That's not nothing. I mean, it would have taken a minute to execute the moves no matter what. So let's say, 16 to 18 minutes of thought to deal with the prep. That's something, but he's gotten a pretty comfortable standard position pretty quickly. So it wasn't especially venomous prep. It was fine. It's not bad, but not crushing either. Okay, so yeah, that's nice of you, Donald. Hopefully Kostya will have good luck in his upcoming tournaments. Tiger says maybe Ding just wanted to get Gukesh off of his prep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the benefits here, even if you don't do something drastic with your own prep, is at least avoiding your opponent's prep. It just makes the game harder for them. You know, if he played a mainline Queen's Gambit, like d4, d5, c4, e6, or even d takes c4, I mean, one of the drawbacks is we're currently at move 8. Gukesh would probably have an hour 59 and still know the position exactly. And if he's able to play out his own prep till move 15 or so, for example, that reduces how many moves Gukesh has to think about and work on. It reduces the chances of tiring him out. It reduces the chances of getting a mistake. Like, on any given move that one of us normal people plays, right, we have something like a 30% chance of making a mistake. But if you ask how many mistakes will we make in 20 moves or 40 moves, is it obvious that over the course of 40 moves we would all make more mistakes than over the course of 20, right? Whatever our error incidence is, you multiply it by the number of moves, right? So if half of your moves are mistakes and you play 20 moves, you'll make about 10 mistakes. If half of your moves are mistakes and you make 40 moves, you'll play 20 mistakes, right? So let's say, unlike us, Ding and Gukesh make like a small mistake once every 10 moves, by which I mean a mistake that's of a scale of like 0.3 to 0.5, right? I'm really thinking around 0.3. And they make a big mistake once every 60 moves. So if you have Gukesh play from move 5 to 40 on his own 35 moves, right? And what did I say? A small mistake once every 10 moves. You might get 3 small mistakes out of him over the course of the game, whereas if you let him play 15, 20 moves of prep, you might only get 2 small mistakes out of him by the time you get to the end game and to time control at move 40. So extending the game on its own, just getting your opponent out of their opening theory, is a positive thing to do, regardless of whether or not your opening prep gives you an advantage or really crushes their clock, right? It's still increasing your odds. So that's a very good point. So far, Alexa, I also feel like Ding has been playing quite a bit better than what we've seen in recent tournaments for him. Let me see if my stream thinks it's dropping frames. It says drop frame 0. So it might just be you, which would be really good news for my computer. Normally I would, as soon as you said that, I assumed my computer was dying, but yeah, might actually be on your end. I mean, he's definitely showing nerves. But remember, he had huge nerves in the World Championship match against Nepo, and he played better in that match than in any subsequent event since then, right? So the nerves, I've watched sometimes the video of them playing, and it's a little bit tough to watch Ding because it looks like he's suffering and under pressure and not enjoying himself, you know? Like, it doesn't look great. But the level of play is still pretty good. In my opinion, the opening was quite complicated, and he didn't crumble quickly. He made one miscalculation that's very understandable, Fischer Seb. He looked at the best move, bishop e7. He looked at the mistake he played, rook h5. He analyzed each of them out and missed one thing in each line, about 6 moves down the road. It's not great. Obviously, it's like a mistake by his standards, but it's not terrible either. Okay, but your opinion is it was more blunderous than game 1. I feel like Gukesh's play in game 1 was way worse than Ding's play in game 3. Ding made one miscalculation. He's playing very calculation-based chess. He's making a big effort on that front, and he's playing with confidence in his calculations. He's playing aggressively. He's trying to take the advantage with black. So I'm not going to read too much into one plausible miscalculation. Myself. That is myself. I'm not telling you that you're wrong to have your perspective. Yes, Basti, it's a point. Ding, by being out of prep himself, is going to increase the possibility of himself making a mistake, just as he increases the chances of Gukesh making a mistake. That is true. I basically agree with that as just factual. Yeah. So there's some risk in that. But, chess is played at this level where if you risk more yourself, you've got more chances of winning as well. And sometimes when you see very high incidences of draws in chess, it's because the players aren't willing to take risks themselves. If Ding wanted to keep as high as possible the chances of drawing this game, then yes, he should also play 15, 20 moves of Queen's Gambit theory, stay in a position that he knows well. He can get 2 result positions and basically never lose as white. As a lot of, super GMs tend to do. And then if Gukesh wants to increase winning chances, Gukesh has to take more risks from the black side, which is a riskier thing to do to begin with. So yeah, so Ding is playing a more risky chess here on purpose as white. Once again, not extremely risky because there's no positional weaknesses, like there's no gambits, it could be way riskier than this. But yes, the risk and the chances of a decisive result are definitely increased notably playing like this than reciting theory together. Okay, let's talk about what he might be thinking about, Demonic Bag, right? Let's talk about what white might be thinking about. First, let's start with my first idea, because that's what I can talk about. D4, idea castles, and C5, gripping dark squares with pawns after a dark square bishop trade. Right? So here, normally you'd be looking to try to break the structure as quickly as possible with B6 or E5. There's other options, but okay, have a good day, Khan Goraya. I think for each player, getting their first win in the match is important. Kind of equally important, Khan. It gives them each the confidence to play for wins in the future. So it makes them each more willing to take some risks, more believing in themselves, go for it, and thus they'll play more confidently, which means also more riskily. It'll also keep them from getting too despondent later on in the match when eventually one of them will be behind, right? You don't know who it'll be, but at some point, 5 games down the road, somebody's going to be up 1 or 2 games. The person who's behind is going to be more confident about their ability to strike back, knowing that they've already won a game in the match, than if it were all draws and then at some point they lost a game, right? Like Kasparov against Kramnik, who never won a game. He was down 1 game for most of the match, and you could see that there was like a building desperation from Kasparov's side because he had never won a game in that match against Kramnik, so he didn't feel or believe or know where he could get a win. Neither of these players will feel as desperate, nor will you feel the same kind of inevitability of the squeezing draw death of the match coming, because they've each won a game, so they'll each have that belief that they can win another one. I don't think there was ever a spell, Kongoraya. Gukesh is a young player. There are a couple strong players that he's probably never won a game against. And I don't think it bothers him at 18 to play against an opponent he hasn't beaten yet. It's just a matter of yet for him. I don't think there's any spells. Well, George, it depends on how long the match was, right? Like, you could have a match with 10 games or a match with 40 games. And it's kind of about the percentage. But there's one World Championship match where they only had a single draw. And I have that match somewhere in my notes. Let me see. I can look it up for you real quickly. It's almost killing my computer. It was Steinitz-Chigorin, their first match in 1889. 10 wins versus 6 with 1 draw. So 17 games, of which only 1 draw. That was the most decisive or undrawing World Championship match of all time. There you go. That was very pre-FIDE, yeah. That was 1889. Okay, Ding's played a move. He's played the simpler move, Knight C3. And they're basically equal on the clock already, which is fine. Not too special. I mean, just not too much time used. But we'll see how their time usage is in the next 4 or 5 moves, because since they're at move 8 or 9 and out of theory, they could get low on time, or they could play some simple moves like, you know, castles and d4 and c6. They could play some of these moves very quickly, potentially. We'll see if they head towards time pressure or not in their time usage in the next 4 or 5 moves. Yeah, Sean is saying, I really like the fact they're going for fresh positions rather than game after game of Petrov-Berlin grind, and one person cracks and loses one game at move 100 after 20 games. Which, unfortunately, Sean, they're not even playing 20 games. They're only playing... Good, Gukesh plays a move in 2 minutes. No reason to lose all your time, right? So, unfortunately, they're only playing 14 games. But yeah, I see your point, Sean, that someone eventually wins one game maybe in game 14 or game 12 after a lot of draws. What that is about, Sean, is I think the same thing as in the Ding versus Nepo World Championship match, the previous match, right, where you saw the players going after each other in a totally different way than in any of the Carlsen matches. And it's just both players thinking that they could win. That's the difference. There were times in the Carlsen era where it felt like extremely hard to ever win a game and like very likely to have a lot of draws. And that's also something that was shared briefly in like Kramnik's World Championship matches, right? Even though I'm not going to say there's like a Kramnik era, but you know, since Kramnik won the World Championship match against Kasparov and ended Kasparov's era, there have been many matches where it felt like, you know, it was going to be really hard to win a game. A long grind to win a single game, right? Excuse me. So what you're seeing here, what you're appreciating, is simply the fact of the players thinking they can win, causing them to make slightly more aggressive and more risky choices. Again, they're not playing, you know, the Blackmer-Deemer Gambit or anything like that, but they're playing a more aggressive chess than what you see in the Sinkfield Cup or almost any random super tournament, actually. So All right. Looks like the bouse is up. So we'll bring in Jesse. Good morning, Jesse.
Good morning, bud. I'm just gonna get a coffee and I'll be right
Not
back.
hearing anything, turn up your volume. Okay, I'll turn up my volume. Good morning, bouse. Bringing Jesse's chair already and see where we go from there. Okay, let me get the live position back up. Jesse's probably still getting a drink or something. Ding is thinking a little bit. Would Jesse play such positions as white? Yeah, he probably wouldn't be averse to it. A position that's out of theory and just playable, a lot of pieces still on the board. I guess that Jesse would be perfectly happy playing like this as white. We'll get to hear from him soon. No Skibix, I don't think he's trying to play dry. I think this is an attempt to play fresh. Okay, Asher's saying you could play knight d4, bishop h7, and f4, shutting down the move e5. Yes, but f4, weakens some of the neighboring squares in a slightly weird way. So I'm not impressed by the move, and here's going to be a simple response from black. You could trade and then push, trade, and recapture. And white's center pawns, they're not an isolated pawn, they're not even hanging pawns, but they're slightly weird pawn structure in the center for white, just a little tricky to sort out. I would assume black's comfortable, but it is fresh, so you could play like this as white. It creates a fresh position. Yeah, Lethal Lawn, I think one of the main questions is whether white wants the d2 pawn on d3 or d4 in the live position. Yeah. Okay, let's see what he just did, because he just decided on something. He made the trade. So after e takes d, which I assume Gukesh will play pretty quickly, he could potentially play d4 and give us, yeah, there it is, very quickly. He could potentially play d4 and get us a normal Queen's Gambit exchange. Hey, Jesse.
How you doing, bud?
I'm all right. How about you?
Mr. Jask says you are got a cold, need to have a cold?
Oh,
What do you think? Yeah, you do?
Yeah, I do, for sure.
You think that's because you've been run down by this world championship?
I think a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also, a cold going around here at home.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sicker than the others, and I think normally I'm less sick than everyone else.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, you know what? I will go grab a certain kind of medicinal remedy here. B4 from Ding. First staking out the move C5 before playing D4. And maybe he's even going to rush the move. No, he's not going to rush B5 when there's C5. But I'm going to leave you with a little question, Jesse, while I go grab the medicine. Would you be happy playing this opening here as white? That's what chat wants to know. This kind of a situation here. Would you be feeling all right?
I wouldn't feel terrible, but also, black is completely fine. At least that's my first little look here. So one thing I'm hoping actually to do is for us to get an analysis board working where I can move the pieces around. Kostya didn't like it. He didn't like to lose control. He's a control freak. So he wouldn't let us have our own board. I'm sure David has said a couple of these things, but I'm gonna guess that this is something largely inspired by rapport
Mm-hmm.
for Ding. Um, and I think first thing that's interesting to me, David, is Gukesh thinks for 5 minutes on move three, and you could do so many different things there, right? So many different things. By the way, I've been thinking that they call this the ready opening on chess.com,
Okay.
but um, I don't actually think of this as the ready. Um, a lot of times I think this could transpose to like a Zucker tort just by move three, just by move three. And anyway, so he thinks forever on bishop f5.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
so that should tell us that hey, at a certain level, this is working. This whatever whatever it is this opening is that we got, dude, just out of book.
mm-hmm.
We're just gonna play chess at move four,
Yeah.
right? So bishop e2, h6, bishop a3. Now that's the first move that's a little weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I've been thinking about recently, just as an alternate move, alternate thing for white, for myself, is like, oh, maybe I should just start playing like a Queen's Indian reversed. You know?
That's exactly
I,
what he's doing.
well, bishop a3. Well, we could argue about it. Okay, yeah, maybe bishop a3 is not so bad. And he did do it kind of quickly, so maybe this is still the rapport.
Oh yeah, that was still prep.
Yeah. Okay, so bishop takes, knight takes, c4, knight back. So even despite the fact that black has lost some time, he seems completely solid.
And apparently he hasn't really lost time, Jesse, which is weird because he played h6, but you can see he's got the same number of pieces developed as white. He's like right in step.
Mhm. Okay, and so knight c3 is the first big tank from our boy
Mm-hmm.
on move 9.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just rehashing this. I
Yeah,
just
yeah, it's
got
fine. There's probably
to.
some other people who just arrived, so it's fine for you to
Yeah, yeah.
show us how you get oriented when you arrive.
So knight c3, it's hard to imagine another move besides knight c3. Castles. Takes. And the problem for white, right, is like it you kind of need a plan here. And these positions are so solid. One thing I enjoyed about our last game was that it was a game which is, I feel, kind of rare, where you have a top level game where it was really the discussion of just one thing. Okay. And that one thing was the placement of the light square bishop. So in this position, the bishop on f5 in the Carlsbad structure, right? If that bishop can be fine and unmolested, it can come to the bishop to the f5 square where it's, has influence, then black is fine. That's one of the things KGB told me. I knew it already, but he liked to stress it. Like, you get the bishop at f5, it's forget about it. Just close your eyes. So, but in that game, right, white had a very clever, prepped way of messing with the bishop, right? And then it turned into a whole calculation fest. Then from a positional thing, it went from a positional question of like, can we make the bishop bad, to then a strategic or a tactical thing of can we capture the bishop? Can we catch it? Which is ultimately right what happens. Okay. So yeah, I feel like it's roughly equal, b4, c6. Um, I could play both sides of this position.
It feels a little bit like the kind of position that you might sometimes get in the London if black plays bishop d6 and you just trade the bishops and then play queen's gambit without the dark squared bishops. Like I thought when Chad asked about it, I was like, yeah, this does seem like something Jesse might get. Like we all agree with you that black's fine, right?
Hmm.
But maybe just, to have a position to play.
Um, yeah, I feel actually I've had it a lot as black too. When I play like Nimzos and all kinds of stuff, they take on D5 and I get some Carlsbad structure. Yeah, that's totally a thing I get. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, let's just call it one of the fundamental structures. Now, one thing that's interesting about this is the difference, of course, is White's pawn is still on D2, which gives him a little bit more flexibility. Now, if he plays D4, right, then he can start thinking about the minority attack. But it's not clear that he wants to play D4. And the other thing we should say is until D4 appears on the board, then B5 is not going to be a thing yet.
Right. So for now, if we put rook e8 on the board, oh, sorry, c6 has been played. So let's just play b5 for white. Black can play c5.
Right.
And all that b5 did, honestly, is give black a freer hand in the center. So it's straight up bad in most middle games to throw this move in. Right, Jesse?
Right. Another obvious thing we should say is that if White wants to dream here and have a story, they could say, well, I got rid of your dark squared bishop, and therefore when I later play d4 and then b5, I have chances of a slightly better, let's call it a minority attack situation.
Yeah.
Right? I think that could be the story that White could tell.
I think the problem with that story, it's a cool story, and I've told myself all kinds of stories like that in my career.
Right.
The problem with the story is this bishop on f5 is very active, right? So your minority attack, if you can't play rook b1, might not be as good, and you may often find yourself playing bishop d3 at some point to have the use of b1 and c2 for your rook and queen. Once you do play bishop d3, then all you have is a simplified Carlsbad structure, right? And no particular reason to have an advantage.
It's yeah. There's no White just. But what I mean by a story is just a plan. Everybody needs a plan, right? One interesting thing I'm noticing too, like let's say it was White's move here and plays d4. Okay. There's so many ways that Black can react. Just because we have a story doesn't mean he can't do things. And like, there's always the question of b5 followed by knight b6, for example, and that looks very plausible. If it were, if White plays d4, for example, then b5 looks like a very plausible plan.
Yeah, I think also Black would probably throw in the move queen e7 for free. Somewhere in this position I just put up, showing the knight b6 maneuver. It would just be coordinating the rooks, so they're defending each other, controlling knight e5, and White has to keep the b pawn defended.
Oh, here's my best piece of chess wisdom. That's my best piece of chess wisdom. Knight d4 was played. Okay, let me tell you my wisdom, which is not necessarily going to apply what's going to happen here, but it might still apply. So, knight d4 is very interesting. Actually, I'm going to tell you my chess wisdom later. Okay. Knight d4 is very spicy because it looks like his intention is to play f4 next. And actually, what's fun about this, I'm going to do the recap video again. I thought my recap video from the last one, round 3, was the best because it was all about this bishop, and now I get to say the same thing because White is making a claim that bishop is maybe a little uncomfortable, even though it's such a proud piece. So my first instinct for Black would be bishop h7. Because if bishop g6, I'm just encouraging f4, f5 to slap it.
Yeah.
I went over a very interesting game, actually. Actually, I have it right here. So we have this book in the program called Techniques of Positional Play.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I found it. and it's Capablanca Bolyubov, 1922. Not the exact same thing, but similar where white achieves f4, f5. And the thing to say about this f4, f5 is it's not a huge attack because black will get the e5 square. They have a bunch of dark squares. It's just about saying that the bishop is cut from life.
Mm-hmm. And you don't even necessarily need to rush f5, right? You can just play f4 and then be ready to play f5, but not give black the e5 square immediately.
True.
He's prevented. Somebody suggested knight d4 and f4 like 3 moves ago. And 3 moves ago, black would have had several remedies, including c5 kicking the knight or e5 trading off the f pawn. And in the last 3 moves, he's secured or prevented both of those things, right? He got rid of the e pawn for black by trading it. Then he controlled the c5 square with his pawn, so his knight could be unmolested. And now he's ready to push the f pawn and create, another weird or less normal position.
So I just want to say, I think this is interesting, but I would rather be black at this point because now white is going to be doing fancy pants things. Now he's the one doing fancy pants things, and the worst fear I have now as black is that my bishop could be poor. But also the bishop, it's not forever poor because someday over the rainbow, I can play f6, bishop g8, and bring it back out.
That looks like a lot of work.
But it's a big concession for white to play f4, f5 as well.
My main idea here after f4 would be to try to break with c5.
No, there's a lot of different ideas.
So,
we're gonna have a lot of ideas, David. That's why I don't trust it too much.
okay, yeah. My instinct is not to super trust it either and to be kind of mildly encouraged as black. Like, okay, you want to fight like this? Like, this is not going to be under control for you for very long. So yeah, there's multiple ideas. Even just the idea of playing c5, there's 2 different ways to execute it, right? One is you go like rook c8 and start playing b6. Or the other is you just play a5. You go after the b pawn.
Okay, so bishop h7 played, and we're gonna see if our intuition is correct with f4. Now, let me just tell the story from white's point of view, and the plan of rook c8, b6, c5 can maybe help us get into the white's plan's head. So if we imagine f4 here, let's play rook c8, totally plausible.
Okay.
f5, b6. He plays queen b3. Okay, waiting on this thing, maybe playing f4 later. In that case, though, what I wanted to say is that if the bishop's shut out, then when you play b6, c5, there's a strong case to be made that I'm just going to come hopping in with bishop a6 and knight b5 and all this stuff, and I'm going to have the superior force count because I'm going to have an extra piece when you open it all up on the queen side. So now, maybe queen b3 is more clever. Maybe queen b3 is more clever. One thing I noticed right away with queen b3 is if the natural knight e5, then we get to play f4, knight d3, and then f5 is stronger than in the previous variation because the knight doesn't have any, it'll owe us time.
He'll have to just went on an expedition and now it doesn't know what it's doing there.
Yeah.
I mean, that looks like really walking into white's plan to send the knight to e5 and then d3. Very, very encouraging. I think a normal, simple move would be queen e7, reminiscent of me wanting queen e2 in game 1. But
well, David, isn't the first thing to ask about queen b3 is does c5 really mess with your whole situation?
What? Then the knights are established on c3 and d4.
Well, okay, so you're saying you would take, and then you lose a tempo with the queen, and my bishop and my knights are all looking at those light squares kind of nicely. So you need a nice square for that queen to prove.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a3 or b4. Let's go to a3 first. think I finally calculated that if you go knight d3, knight takes d5 will win a pawn for white. So I don't think you can come in. I don't know if you wanted to, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. When I look at this position, it seems like black is doing great. I don't know. Queen e7 as an example. I don't know where to put the thing.
okay, rook something to c1. Let's say rook a c1 actually.
Okay, wait. Before we go down the rabbit hole, let's just go
Yeah.
back to queen b3 and say queen b3 looks like it's provoking c5.
I mean, if you don't want to get into too many variations and just say our basic positional ideas here, I don't like c5 for black. I don't think queen b3 walks into it because I just don't think it's what black wants to do, period.
Well,
To isolate
apparently,
that pawn, no.
Ding agrees with you, by the way.
Yeah.
He agrees with you. Um,
I
I
mean,
think black is more than fine in that
yeah.
position. And I think after knight c5, I would want to think more about where I go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure Gukesh is calculating that right now. But I'm just trying to do something where I don't go down the rabbit hole immediately.
The moves
Just
that I like
yeah, go ahead, because I
are,
want to know what else we can
yeah.
do as
So
well.
I like queen e7, just a basic move coordinating my position, right? But if not queen e7, there's another move I like, Jesse, which is a5. And with a5, I say, let's see how healthy your minority is, right? Let's see how healthy your little minority on the queen side is if I start looking at poking at the dark squares, opposing you, coming forward to fight as black.
Okay, that's kind of interesting. Now, let's just say I'm a fool and just play a3
Okay,
just to see what your idea
sure.
is.
Yeah, and can I just say that like my instinct, even though my first instinct was queen e7, like my instinctive thought on a5 after it came to my mind was like, oh, that's a good move. So I know it's just me saying it about my own move in a sense, but
Hmm.
it feels quite good to me. I would probably just trade on b4 after you play a3. We would isolate that little puppy, right? And now the queen will go to either e7 or b6. It might still be e7.
Well, because b6 you run into knight a4, right?
b6, knight a4, exactly. I wasn't sure. I mean, I could go queen a7 and the rook's not defended on a1 enough. But I don't know. So I'm just going to, since I don't know, I'll just go here. Queen e7.
Okay, but now I can. Here's another story after a move like that. Then I play d3, and I say, "Hey, bud, I got you. I got you kind of controlled a little bit here, buddy."
You play dog 3?
Dog 3, yeah.
But what do you mean you've got me controlled? There's not really any pressure on me. Your f4 plan is gone. Your b4
I
pawn's isolated.
I took away this knight on f6's square. I limited h7.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the knight on f6 would be happy to play a typical maneuver here to d6 if it could. I have to worry about my rook on a8. But I think the most obvious move for me now is knight e5, attacking, tickling the d pawn, right? What are you up to?
But then I have knight a4.
Knight a4, sure. I bring the other knight to d7.
Now, obviously, this is just like a positional question. As white, I could feel reasonable about myself here.
Yeah. Yeah. You haven't done anything that, really risky that you have to regret yet.
No, but I just have a story of like, okay, I'm mildly better because the d3 pawn is cutting the bishop on h7.
I guess so. I mean, that your bishop on e2 is better than the bishop on h7. I think you're defending your d pawn.
No, I don't know. I feel with this one, I feel okay, but let's just say, okay, so let's go back to queen b3. So we have c5 and a5. Um, are there any other candidate moves we should? And actually, let's just say there's many obvious strengthening moves that black could play, and nothing drastic is going to happen to him. For example, rook e8, queen e7.
Mm-hmm.
All of these moves are reasonable moves for black to make.
Yeah.
One nice thing about rook e8 that I like as black is
Mm-hmm.
unless I'm afraid of D3, unless I'm afraid of D3, then I um, will just say that that is a great strengthening move.
Yeah, I mean that's a great square for the rook for sure. At this
So
point
maybe
with the
actually here,
information we have.
a narrative, this is why it's so cool to look at the different plans. A narrative of a rook e8 would be to say, the only thing I'm okay, as black, I'm concerned about maybe f4, f5. I'm concerned a little bit about d3. Is on rook e8, then if you go d3, then I could play c5. And then it's a little bit stronger for me.
Yeah, I don't know why you ever want to play c5. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to lose by playing it. I don't see why you would ever want it when you could just not play it. As an alternative.
Well, okay. I think the claim with c5 when we do it is that you cannot comfortably either play d3 or control d3.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's a dynamic plan, but I want to engage you on the light squares there. So,
Mm-hmm.
for
But I
example,
did the same thing with the knight on e5. I put the same pressure on d3 without isolating my queen pawn, and you were worried about my bishop on h7.
well, with the c5 thing, you never achieved control over d3. Okay, so let's try it one more time. So how about rook e8, David?
Mm-hmm.
I want to do rook e8 because then I just want to ask you, what do
Mm-hmm.
you want to do here? Is it d3? Is it f4? Is it a4?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
One,
know personally. Personally, I don't like a4 ever here because of a5,
right.
b5, c5. I would rather be black probably.
So one cool narrative, if for black, is we say, well, if they go d3, then Kraai's plan of c5 is probably strong. If they go a4, then David's plan of a5 is pretty
Oh, you're
reasonable.
talking like a politician now. You're trying to be like, this is a consensus. This is a little bit of your stuff, a little bit of my stuff.
No, I'm not being a politician. I'm trying to say there's a bunch of plans. You
Mm-hmm.
have to figure out what they are.
Yeah.
And then if you have more than one,
Mm-hmm.
then a flexible move like rook e8 is a beauty.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I see. Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, rook e8 is definitely a nice move. Gukesh spending a bit of time on this move here.
I
As he
think we
did on
might get a
game one
famous
before
Gukesh
playing queen
think
e2.
here. We might get a famous Gukesh think.
Yeah, this is the kind of position where he could try to go deep. Even though it's again the kind of position where a lot of us just play, queen e7 or rook e8 push, in like moments.
Okay, David, I know that you're not concerned about c5, but if I'm black, I would want to be concerned about. So d3, and then let's see if this c5 move is worth anything. So c5 takes, takes, queen
Okay, but
d1.
there's lots of moves we could play other than c5, right, Jesse?
Yeah, I just want to, as black though, I'm trying to get inside his head, and I'm like, well, if I play rook e8, is it a concession because I'm allowing d3? Maybe I can't stop d3 anyway, right? But if I can, I want to try to tactically tackle it.
Okay, so let's go queen b4.
Oh, so you're not even worried about losing the Pieshka on d3.
I'll take on b7, I think. Yeah, knight
Oh,
d3,
but
queen b7.
okay, so rook c8. Now you got to go like rook fd1 or something.
Yeah, but Spanish Addict and anybody else out there, we specifically do not want to hear any computer evaluations in the chat. If it makes it more interesting to you to compare what we say to a computer, look at a computer on your own, but don't
Mhm.
don't dump that knowledge on everybody else. That kind of interest deflating spoiler nonsense. There are a lot of other streams that have engines on them. This is perhaps the only one that doesn't. So
That's right,
leave it
buddy.
that way for everybody else who wants it that way.
Yeah. Also, I gotta find. Oh, here's our eval bar,
Yep.
and You give a 0.5. Maybe we should update it. I'm definitely gonna say I'm gonna go for I'm gonna go zeros. I'm
Me
gonna start
too.
with zero.
Me too. My eval was from a couple moves ago.
Yeah. I'm it wouldn't surprise me if I quickly shift to black being a touch better here. But I
Sure.
need an idea. I want an idea for black here.
Yeah. Why not only eval bar? I'm not sure I understand that, Finovo. We've put up our own eval bar, which is what Jesse and I think the evaluation is, so that somebody who just pops in can quickly get a sense of what's going on, um, or if somebody's like newer to chess and just wants to like stay oriented, an eval bar, which could be wrong, but which gives them a sense of where we think it is when we're not repeating the evaluation, when we're often a long variation instead. Yeah. Okay, so after knight c5, queen b4, did you want to try more moves here, Jesse, or what were you thinking?
Actually, I want to just introduce one more idea.
Okay.
Another idea to try for black. It's a very rich position here for black. Like there's a lot of different moves.
Yeah.
Is knight e4.
Right.
And knight e4 is got the simple claim that if you take, I'll recapture with the pawn, and I'll be doing at least fine because I'll have later knight e5 and I'll be able to tickle the d3s, all the light squares.
Interesting. I mean, another idea you have, Jesse, whether you take back with pawn or bishop, is that you're offloading one knight before white plays d3, which you said kind of limited your knight.
True, yeah,
On f6.
yeah.
So you just sort of like offload it first. That said, I mean, with the pawn on d5, black's got plenty of space. It's not like they're dying to make exchanges, but if you think that knight is not the best, you could play knight e4 to trade it. You could also, in this position, immediately play knight e8 for black, right? And do this knight twirl that I was talking about. Put the knight on d6. Get out of the way of your f-pawn. Control some potential outpost on c4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So on knight e4, David, I think either rook fd1 or maybe the more natural queen b2.
Sorry, after what?
So in our position,
Yeah.
so knight e4.
Knight e4, sure.
I think white wants to play like queen b2 there.
Okay. Highfalutin and kind of nothing doing.
Well, he needs to protect the pawn on d2. He's got to do something.
Okay, maybe rook fd1 would make sense then. Protect the d2 and d3 pawn in the future.
With rook fd1, then I was worried like queen f6 might start talking to you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But by the way, David, if I can play knight e4 and then queen b2 is the best move, then even if I don't find anything now for black, I get the knight d6 thing for free.
Yeah.
So for example, queen b2, if I do play knight d6, then knight e5 is probably a threat. I don't know about knight d6, but I just want to say that's just another option that I get once I play knight e4. Oh, this is a hard guess the move. So after queen b3, we have rook e8, c5, a5, knight e4, and just queen e7 would be also a move.
Yeah. Knight e4 is pretty comfortable.
Yeah. One nice thing about knight e4 from just an intuitive player's point of view is at that point you're just like, well, I'm not the one who's going to have questions to answer.
Yeah.
But Gukesh doesn't play that way. He doesn't want to play he wants to try to hurt you real deep.
Yeah.
But okay, at the moment, I'm guessing 94. I'm also guessing that we're going to be here for a while.
Yeah, it feels feels that way. I mean, I don't think he's going to spend 40 minutes on this move, but a little time.
You know, it's funny because remember when we watched him before in the candidates, it was wild to see him think for 40 minutes on a move like this.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that that's in him. We know that he could think for 40 minutes here.
Oh,
So like for example, like a chump player would be like, well, if knight e4 at queen b2, then I should just feel good about myself. But for Gukesh, should be like, no, I want to know exactly what I'm going to do then.
Here's a suggestion from chat. In your knight takes e4, d4 line,
Yeah.
they say maybe just d3 for white. Just say, hey, we'll trade the pawn and the bishop and just play that standard position with the knight on d4.
I think then you got to really worry about c5 after d3.
Before trading on d3, right? Just c5 here.
Yeah. That looks pleasant for a peasant. I don't know if
that we might drop the pawn on d3 straight up here. Yeah, nice move, Jesse.
There might be some
position where I've liked the move c5.
There might be some way for white to achieve equality there. I don't know, but anyways.
Yeah.
But actually, good. What's good about that question is I didn't think about d3 when I did this knight e4 thing.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that if Gukesh plays knight e4, he's going to be like, all right, I'm going to really drill. Instead of it just being some intuitive thing that Kraai plays, he's going to be like, I'm going to drill down on everything that white can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to change my eval bar to negative 0.02.
That's a lot for an equal position.
Also, because on our stream here, I've noticed that when it's just at 0, it looks like we don't have, like it's
yeah,
not
you
working.
can't really see it when it's at 0.
And honestly, even now, it's just a little blue fleck. That's all it is over there.
Yeah, hard to see still. But I mean, I'm not gonna just make it visible for no reason. So I'm leaving mine at 0. Nothing wrong with white's position. You know, 2 knights on dark squares defended by pawns in the middle of the board. It's fine. It might be as much as 0.05 for black. Possible. Jesse, do you do anything for Thanksgiving, by the way?
Oh yeah.
Not to like go on some like weird sidetrack, but
no, we can. I'm happy to go on sidetracks. So yeah, we took the kids over to my girlfriend's mom's place, and you know, it was kid. You know, is it really relaxing? You know, is it a day off? Not entirely.
No, not the way a day of school is.
Yeah, but dude, her mom had this massage chair, bro. Oh damn! I sat my ass down in that massage chair.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was amazing, bro. Man, amazing. That was great.
I like sitting myself down, period. But yeah, I mean, a massage chair sounds even better.
Yeah. How about you, man?
I had my mom and my uncle and his wife over, and it was them plus oh, you know, Chloe's mom is here too, so we had the kids and a couple grandmas.
We gotta move, my friend.
Oh, let's see.
Surprising. Okay, so this was actually not what I guessed, and
wow,
it plays knight e5.
This was really not what we guessed, right? As he's saying, come and play f4.
Right, so let's review. We didn't like this move. So this is an example of Gukesh finding something deep, and now we have to find what he found.
Yeah.
Because after knight e5, my grief, anyways, was f4, knight d3, f5, and then it seems like white's achieved the f5 push with a lot of extra time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, clearly, or it seems that I am probably missing something.
Yeah.
In that case.
But let's see what we're missing after simple f4. Somebody had asked earlier, Jesse, about c5 after f5, and that's your favorite move. So let's just calculate it for a second.
Well, but they're like, okay, maybe. I kind of believe in white there though, because if at the minimum, if I just play bishop takes d3, the real problem for black is the bishop on h7.
Oh, Jesse, the evaluation you put in is 0.02. Is that what you meant?
Negative 0.02, yeah. So not a lot.
0.02. 200ths. Okay.
No, Kraai. No, that's too much. That's why I didn't move at all. I'll go negative 0.2, but now I change it. Now I go back to 0. Until I understand 95,
Until
I go back.
Understand 95, yeah. Okay, sorry. I got distracted because chat was asking, like, maybe he put in 0.02 and that's why the bar didn't move. So, and it looks like they were right. Okay. So, f4, knight d3, f5, c5, bishop takes d3, pawn takes d4, e takes d4, queen to b6 maybe, rook f4.
David, I also just want to say something super obvious. F4, knight d3, white doesn't need to play this f5 thing because he can just play knight takes d5 pronto and he's just winning a pawn. So we don't need to be that complicated with f5.
Then knight d5.
Bishop takes d3.
Bishop takes d3.
Okay, let's see how this goes.
And there's knight b4 at the end, so I don't think you have a pawn just yet. You might be getting close to a pawn. I've got b7 hanging, but queen b3, c5 will be fine.
Okay, good. I'm glad you brought this up because maybe that's the intention. See, already it's so dependent on if this is true, if the idea is truly f4 knight d3, it's a deep forest. It's a deep forest.
Where he really did not need to go at all, right?
No,
He's got perfectly fine moves like rook e8 and queen e7 that chumps would blitz out. And at this point, by chumps, we mean almost everyone in the world other than him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think Wesley So would think for 30 minutes and then play 95? He'd just play some clean move.
Yeah, just
no
play.
Worries.
Oh, dude, KGB would be so mad at me if I played 95, dude.
Yeah.
He would say some garbage. He'd be like, why do you always have to be trying to play so interesting? Just play your move.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's try to figure this out. F4. The other thing that's freaking me out about 95 is that white is not obliged to play F4 immediately.
Yeah.
So then before we go deep calculations, like one of the problems with this 95 move is like white can do presumably a variety of other moves because knight d3 right now it's going to run into knight d5. So for example, if white doesn't like this f4 knight d3 stuff, a4 right now is more plausible than it was before because the c5 square is no longer touched by the knight.
Right.
Also, yeah.
Although still, if I go a5.
And in those positions, white usually has like ba.
B takes a.
Yeah, and then maybe I have a little coconut touch going on.
Mm-hmm. Queen a5, and then you're wondering if you can take b7, right?
This is an example of a question, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's leave that. I just want to put that out there first, because that would be, if I was black, I'd be like, not only do I have to calculate all this stuff, but I have to ask, am I really doing, I don't know if I have a threat, Okay. So, all right, let's get down and dirty, as Ding is certainly doing here. So f4, knight d3, and then let's just pause on this, because white has f5, he's got knight d5 ideas, and knight d3 looks cool, but it doesn't actually threaten anything.
Yeah.
Maybe we could argue it threatens c5. But even then, David, it's still your move, c5, bc, knight c5, and then the knight is, it's a cool knight, but You didn't, and let's just stress, David doesn't like c5 because it means that the d4 knight is stable forever. That's why he doesn't like it.
Yeah. Okay, Jesse.
Yeah.
From chat, there's a suggestion that the knight on d3 might be trapped if white played knight to b1 and just said, welcome to d3.
I mean, yeah, this whole 93 thing, dude. Okay, let me just introduce another crazy idea. I think f4 is not a concession, but maybe somebody could tell a story that says, oh, f4 is actually a big concession. Actually, let me do a totally different story, David. Okay, so the story could be that if you play f4, it's actually a huge concession. So if we just imagine I go back to d7.
So bad that he would spend 2 moves asking you to play it.
I'm just trying to understand it, I'm just trying. So one point about this is now if you can't really play d3 anymore because then I have rook e8.
Mm-hmm.
And I will
So this is prevention against d3.
Right, this is prevention against d3. And that if you play f5, then I'm going to say that my bishop will eventually get out, and then I get the e5 square, and you're not actually doing anything to me.
Wow.
If this is true, David, this is that's obviously it's a positional idea. It's not a tactical idea,
Right.
And it's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, I mean it's both, right? It's he's trying to prevent that d3 move. That's crazy. How long did he spend on 95? Do you see it on your end?
It's so dumb with the chess.com thing, dude. When I come to the stream, let me see if I'll refresh. When I come to the stream in the morning, oh, actually now it shows 20 minutes, dude. So we did guess that he was going to take forever, and it might be a very deep idea.
Yeah, I would guess that even Gukesh is not going to have a lot of experience with this pawn structure, like if white played f4 at some point, right? I think he's young. He can't have experience in every single structure yet. He doesn't play millions of blitz games online, right? So it's a slightly unusual structure. He's got to be making some of these evaluative judgments himself, right? Whether f4 is good or bad, what the pluses and minuses of it are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So actually, let me bring up this game again. So in this book, Techniques of Positional Play, right? It's giving you a variety of patterns of positional play. And one of them is to put the pawn on f5 to crush the bishop on h7, right? So, David, let's put on the board f4, knight d7, f5, just to think about it a second. As you said, by the way, you're totally right. There might not be any rush to play f5. Mm-hmm. But let's just put that on the board. And then the narrative for black is that the weakening of the central squares, e5, e4, and the whole e file is so bad that this is okay for us as black. Mm-hmm. But the narrative for white is much simpler. It's I'm up a piece now.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to be able to win the battle of, say, the queen side.
Or of anywhere that opens up other than the king side.
Very good. Right. Even the king side, as long as
the king side, I'll have a space advantage, so I can win a fight there too.
Right. And in this game, whereas he actually gives a couple games that are like this, but the Kappa Bogiabov game is really, it's a real fight. It's not like it's just simply over. A lot of times, you're shown a positional idea and somebody's just winning, but a lot of times in real life, in real chess, right, you get a position like this and people are still going to make mistakes on both sides. Mm-hmm. And it's more important just to kind of understand what the ideas are. And by the way, we are just trying to understand 1395 from Gukesh.
Yeah.
That's all we're trying to do because it seems like he is provoking f4 and
Yeah.
encouraging, purposely encouraging this f5 move, which is a known way to try to dominate somebody's position. Their bishop on
Right.
h7. Oh, and it's so also remember what I said earlier. I was like, that game was all about game three was all about the domination of Black's light square bishop. And this is looking like if it goes this way, it's definitely still about that domination.
At the moment, tactically speaking, it seems like f4 does force him to retreat. So he's literally saying f4 is so bad, I'll pay you 2 tempi to play it.
Yeah.
Um, because, okay, the knight can't go to g4 as far as I can tell. h3 would
Yeah.
be awkward for it. And knight d3, as chat was saying, if the knight retreats to b1 or d1 or something, it looks like black has to at least lose a pawn to extricate the knight with c5 or something, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I guess he's saying f4 is god awful. Wow.
Now there's one more idea, David, and I don't buy it yet, but I just want to, maybe we should look at it. So on f4, you could consider sacking on c4 and making a claim that the light square bishop is going to be able to find its way to a square like d3.
I mean, he'll have to not allow f5 if he sacks a pawn, right? Now it's on.
Okay, so I don't know about this. I really don't know. I'm just trying. And I'm just trying, David. I'm just trying, buddy.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Oh, so is there, after queen takes c4, is there some fancy move that black can play? And we got to do something pronto because he's about to shut us down forever with f5.
Yeah. All right, let's try knight e4.
So on knight e4, I got a couple of concerns. One of them is like some kind of knight c6. I guess if it was going to come, it would be right now.
Yikes. That is really intense. I wasn't prepared for that. All right, let's take on d2.
Or what?
You take d8, right?
Oh, you're taking the knight. I was just thinking queen takes d2 might even also be a thing. I don't know.
No. I didn't like that so much. Actually, maybe it is a thing too, yeah.
See, that's what I'm saying. That's how intense this is. But this one, knight takes d8, knight c4, knight b7, looks like white has a couple coconuts to his name.
You've got 2 coconuts at the moment, but
You're going to get knight takes e3.
yeah.
Yeah.
At minimum.
So Gukesh, why does it have to be so hard, buddy?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this hard.
I'll start with rook b8, knight c5, and then take the coconut.
Okay, let's just pause for a
And
second.
I've got knight c2 and the second coconut, right? Yeah.
Let's just say that that's all very interesting. And let's go back to knight e5. So we're trying to discern what the intentions are after f4. And we're saying maybe knight c4. And then
A move has been played. A move has been played. And it was
a4.
a4.
He followed me. He was like, well, what is it that you want with your knight e5, Bows?
Wow.
What is it that you want?
All right, so the players are in agreement. f4 is just basically under no circumstance the way to play this position.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that because he's still holding it in his pocket.
I know, but it's like close to that, right, Jesse? Because it was like even with 2 tempi on a platter, he was like, I would rather not eat this dish.
Can we go back? Can we go back just to a second? So queen c4 and then knight e4. Let's do this just one more time. Do we really buy this, David? Because the other obvious thing with knight e4 is even if knight takes c6 doesn't work,
right?
Then knight takes e4 is just, I mean, it is true that white is up a pawn. And it's a pretty stable pawn, too.
Knight's pretty good. It just looks bad for black. It's just a pawn, I think. I think he was just headed straight back to d7. I don't think this knight c4 is likely to really be real.
So let's just say it's kind of like a positional gamble, this knight e5. He was like, I think f4 is so poor that I'm just going to go back to d7. And now we're getting a4.
And now we get a4.
My gosh. And now we're going to get some real calculation. Because yeah, we're going to get some real calculation. So, okay, if I'm black, one of the things I would really want to do is just to tighten the screws now. So, for example, knight e4 is now an improved version of my previous knight e4. So that's a good thing.
Oh, like you would take with your d pawn and really clamp.
Yeah.
d3.
So we got to say knight e4 is now a very plausible move for black. Sorry, I'm off the screen. When I get too intense, I would shift over, and I looked over, and I was like, I'm not even on the screen. Knight e4 is looking good. And the thing, too, about a4 is, like, it's a strengthening move. It's the claim that the knight on e5 can't do anything much right away anyway. But it really gives a free hand now to black.
Maybe next white wants to play a5, Jesse.
I don't know. Do you really?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to play b5. So, okay, it could just be a random strengthening move. You know, me, I would have put a rook on c1 or d1 like a chump. But I'm thinking maybe a5. Because from there could be a position where you threaten a6. But if black ever plays a6, then the dark squares are really in ruins, right? And you go knight a4.
David, also, we just gotta say that black could now play a5, and it's a very spicy position.
Yes, a5 is very spicy, and that's where I would start looking at the position myself, would be a5 as black, right? But you see, if white plays a5, this idea, then you could inch up the knight from c3 to c5. You're sort of advancing your dark square line slowly up the board.
Let me say something about this a5, David, for black. By the way, the only thing I really like about your a5 is that it prevents black from playing a5.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons, for sure.
Anyways, wait, what is ding one after a5? Because I just want to stress, now after a5, if f4, now I'm going to d3. And my point of a5 is I'm saying if I get c5 in, it's going to be a hell of a drug, because then I'm going to really crank on your d3 square.
Yeah.
Well, that looks unpleasant for a peasant.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you go a5, it almost feels like Ding has to take b7, which to me looks almost insane, but you were willing to do that.
Well, that was a different position, because now after ba, I want to talk about c5.
Oh, you're not even queen a5ing at all here.
Well, I just want to see where your knight goes, because I mean, now all of a sudden your d3 square is a tender potato.
A potato, huh?
It's a tender potato. I'll be right back.
All right. And with those words of wisdom, I'll be right back. Tender potato. We're missing f5 after king d3. Haha, Janos says that ChessBase India came up with a5 and knight a4. Now, Janos, tell me, does the ChessBase India team, do they use an engine while they're working on their commentary / understanding of the game in progress? Or are they coming up with everything on their own? I want to mention for myself, this position is way outside of the positions I play. I really don't have a lot of experience. You know, there's a lot of chess positions that you could throw at me, and I glance at it, and I've got a couple plans for white and a couple plans for black. Here, I've got nothing. I'm just going move by move, you know, and I really don't know how I'm evaluating the positions. I'm just playing out some moves. Okay, they're using an engine. All right.
This thing, BAC5 looks good for black, right?
We haven't gotten very far in it while you were gone. My first thought had been f4 in response. Pawn takes knight, pawn takes knight, pawn takes knight, pawn takes knight. That was the
Well,
first thing I thought of
but
when you
on
mentioned
F4, I'm
c5.
winning right away with knight C4. Or maybe, yeah. Well, it's a very pleasant position at the moment.
You go knight d3.
Wait, no, David, I'm saying that's F4, after C5 is very good for black after knight C4.
Knight c4?
Yeah.
Oh, c4. Man, I didn't expect you over there. Okay.
Ooh, maybe you could play knight takes. I don't know. No, never mind.
I
Don't even
mean,
listen to what I say.
I
Oh, that is just very pleasant for a peasant.
I don't know. I guess I've got like a simplish knight f3 move, but you could just take on a5 and play
And
simply
then
yourself.
D4, and then it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I like
that's
black there too.
crispy
Yeah, for
critters.
sure. So c5. I mean, I guess I'm not seeing anything I like for white after c5. Nothing I would want to play. Yeah, I don't like that very much. I mean, I imagine there's something concrete, and it's not totally simple. Oh, but the knight's
So,
quite bad on c2. So let's
so
say I
what?
play knight f3, Jesse. I'm just gonna play some moves.
Okay.
I'm just gonna
Knight
go
F3.
like plodding along with whatever I can play. Morning, Wave Lino. Morning, Jake.
Yeah. Okay. And so I just want to say my instinct here is that black is doing wonderful because of the D3 square.
Mm-hmm.
And like a default move for uh, black now after knight F3
Mm-hmm.
would be just knight D3. I'm going to guess I have something even better than that, but
Oh,
that could be
knight
a
d3.
default
Okay.
move. But even knight C4 is interesting there too.
Knight
No,
d3.
I'll take knight C4 back.
Yeah, because I might try queen b7 there, right?
Okay, rook C8 was played.
Wow, mysterious rook.
I thought A5 looked pretty good. He spent 9 minutes on rook C8. And it's another move where I'm not just like at least not immediately. I'm not like getting it, you know?
Well, it doesn't look like he's playing for a5. It looks like he's playing for c5. Right? At some point here?
What is his dream here?
Yeah, I think b6 and c5, as W. Reynolds is saying, is like a very plausible plan with this move. Definitely the move that strikes my fancy for white is a5 here against rook c8. I know you found that funny before, but a5 is definitely what's coming to mind for me.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Now that it's been ratified by ChessBase India. um, so it's also kind of hard to know what white was. It's becoming very okay, but let's just be clear, David. So what
Yeah.
we're saying is that black is still claiming that F4 is poor,
Mm-hmm.
and that we are now going to achieve B6, C5.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear, right? You've got a pawn on d5. Your dream is a pawn duo with your next to your strongest pawn, right? You build on your strength there. It's very, very logical, yeah?
Well, I'm just seeing a lot of like, b6, and then you're allowing bishop a6, and then when your rook goes to
Mm-hmm.
c7, I get a knight b5 tempo when c5 comes.
Right.
So I'm just saying, like, it's kind of a welcome to the jungle kind of thing here going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all right, so from plans for white now, we have a5 and
Mm-hmm.
also still f4, f5.
Right. Although I think f4 is getting worse the more moves get played on the queen side, right? The closer black is to opening something else up.
Wait, no, no, no.
No,
Remember, because the dream of f4, f5 is
to
to say
shut the
I'm
bishop
up a
out. Yeah.
piece on the queen side,
Yeah.
and therefore I want to open it up on the queen side.
Mm-hmm.
A5
A5.
play. Okay.
Yeah.
The Indians must have talked about this kind of plan. Actually, it was actually they communicating with Dig over here. Okay, so A5.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say it something obvious, David. We are going to be in time pressure in this game. Yeah. Okay.
Not guaranteed yet, but looking very likely.
I'll guarantee it.
You
Yeah.
guarantee it. Okay. I mean, these players are both playing calculation based, and they're in a slightly unusual position where it's not as easy to be quickly confident in your valuations, and then they're playing it in a pretty concrete way. I mean, I would give them props for playing some moves in 3 minutes or 9 minutes instead of 20 minutes on every move. But yeah, it does seem like they're gonna get low.
Okay, so now again, black has all kinds of different moves. Knight e4, rook e8. I think a5 makes b6 look weird. b6 already was a little frisky, but now it makes it look especially frisky.
Mm-hmm. So you think rook e8 is a nice clean move?
He's not making clean moves though. We yes.
Yeah.
Um, I still don't understand what the possible problem with knight e4 is. Looks great. But it was great before too. So I don't know if I get that.
Yeah. The thing that's not so clear about knight e4 is that trading knights makes b6 c5 less exciting for black, right? And the rook c8 move really telegraphed a b6 c5 intention to me. So,
But let's just say something obvious with this a5 move. White has committed the structure to be a little bit more stable, i.e., there's
mm-hmm,
not a lot of dynamic zhuzh for white on the queen side anymore, or at
mm-hmm,
least it's difficult to achieve.
yeah. I mean, I don't think there ever
A5,
was going to be, but yeah.
well, you want to have dreams over there. But on 94, I don't think the knights get traded. I think it's like if we play 94, we're concerned with moves like queen b2, or in this case, maybe rook a2.
Yeah, but I mean, it just means the knight trade's on the table. Look, here's what I want to say, Jesse. Let's say we get a dream for black. b6 takes rook a7 c5. Okay? One of the big points of this position for black would be to eventually be able to play d4 and sort of be saying like, hey, I've got more pawns in the center. I'm kicking your piece. Well, not even more pawns, right? Just more space with my pawns. White's got pawns on d2, e3, f2, right? But I'm kicking your pieces. So trading pieces removes my incentive to go for this plan as black. And even if the knight on e4 and c3 sit there not trading but just looking at each other because you play queen b2, I mean, you won't have to be a genius as white that if I go b6 and c5, you can trade a piece. So to me, it goes slightly against what I think Gukesh is up to.
Okay, I do want to say, right, we don't want to play knight e4 and then b6 c5. That much I can agree
Yeah,
with.
that's all I'm saying
But
so far.
Gukesh isn't just playing with one plan. Especially now that a5's happened. Okay,
Yeah.
here he is. He's following you, buddy. He's all with you. He's ready to play b6.
There it is. B6.
And this is very concrete now because
Yeah.
we are allowing a pig on the 7th, and we're saying we really don't.
Yeah. And another
We're,
thing, Jesse, I mean, I just played really basic moves before to make my point about space, right? And when would
Mhm.
c5 and d4 be useful? But
Right.
white has an option here. I think a very basic question to ask is trade on b6, then play f4.
Uh-huh.
And now, if the knight goes to d7, you play b5, taking the c6 square. Of course, at the cost of giving up some other squares, but
Well, right. Let me just say the super obvious too. Like the F4, F5 plan makes a lot of sense after AB because the front has been opened, and then we say we're up a piece. Thank you very much. And your B5 move is definitely a question. So I don't know. I so let's think about this. He thought for 9 minutes on Rook C8,
mm-hmm.
20 minutes on 95, 9 minutes Rook C8, and then quickly played B6. So this confirms your theory that he is dreaming of B6 C5, that he feels confident about this madness.
Yeah,
Oh Lila.
that's intense. He came straight for Ning in this position. He's playing it very ambitiously as black.
Okay, let's do one of your first questions. So AB and F4. Now, maybe what black has some other idea at this point. Maybe there's some way he can make knight D3 work. But let's go back to D7, the sad D7, just for a second.
Yeah.
And then your move, B5. That looks pretty scary for black.
It is scary. For example, if we play c5, knight c6, and black's already cooked.
Yeah.
The d pawn is gone, as well as this outpost being pretty strong. There's rook a7 whenever you want. I mean, it's just completely over.
Okay, so I think what we're saying here is there's a different intention now after F4.
Yeah. So maybe now he's going in somewhere, right? To d3 or c4 or playing c5.
Oh, yeah. Now knight c4. I get it.
Oh, yeah? Okay, show us.
So knight c4, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, c5, and I get the bishop d3 coconut.
Whew. A move before the knight can go to c6. Now it's got to go to somewhere weak. Weak. And bishop d3 will win. Whew.
That's pretty hot. Okay, so let's just look at it again. F4, knight c4.
Yeah.
And white doesn't have to take it.
No. White could play d5. We could get into something really spicy here.
No, but you're just hanging d2.
I know. That makes it spicy, doesn't it?
Yeah, no. But it's not just that I win the exchange. Your structure gets all, like E3 gets all nasty.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to play knight c6. But I agree. I mean, it's a capture race in which black's capturing first. So it's not going to work.
And another nice, just simple variation is you defend rook with rook a2, then black plays b5 himself, and then I'm in like Flynn.
You just want to lock it down? I mean, Gukesh's first move to calculate will be c5, Jesse. He'll look at that before b5.
I get it. I'm just saying, I know that position with b5. But what's important to see is that now that f4 is committed, there's no more d3.
Right.
So black is definitely great in that position. Okay.
But after b5, there is f5, right? And then there's your whole thing about the bishop being locked out.
Yeah, but then my knight on c4 is forever.
And that's enough.
That's
to make up for the bishop.
For me, anyway. For me. That's enough for Gukesh. That's enough for me. Okay, I think we're starting to see some ideas, at least against a4. So now Ding has to calculate, we'll be calculating rook a7 and a variety of other moves as well.
What happens if he plays AB, and then immediate b5? Black plays c5.
b5, right?
And does knight c6 go anywhere? Black
seemingly
can just take the pawn.
Let's take a pawn. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Just had to check.
Yeah. By the way, guys, I just want to stress David's point is that all of the concessions we're giving white, such as rook a7, are paid back for us because of c5, d4. That is the claim. That it's just so massive that we can allow like a rook coming to a7.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to create a position where all his minor pieces are going to be amazing, right? Bishop h7 will be talking forever. The knights are good on f6 and e5. He kicks the great knight out of d4 finally.
And now, by the way, way back when, before white played a4, we were talking about, well, what is black going to do against f4? And there we were saying knight d7 was, maybe the intention. But here, the intention is different. Because now, because we have the ability to play c5, knight c4 is going to be a hard to meet after f4.
Right.
And there also, f4 is a highly committal move where it doesn't, it makes white's whole structure difficult to play with.
Yeah. Black's not exactly threatening knight c4. I was just checking in my head. In this position, a random knight c4, white could play rook d1. And it's not like a big deal. I think black's really just trying to play c5 next move at the moment. Merle says A takes B is forced. Why is he thinking? Well, because if he plays AB, black will play AB, and then he's got to play his next move. So he's just figuring out what to do then.
We also have the suggestion of a6, which it definitely doesn't want to do, because then c5 is just going to do the whole plan. The whole plan's going to be falling on our face then. Even then, I mean, I really don't want to play a6, but even then, a narrative could be that I'm going to plop a knight on b5, and it's going to be so annoying to you.
That would be crazy weird for white to put everything on a6 and a7 while black is just playing in the center.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, black gets the pawn all the way to d3 there, I think, right? That's what they do. White's got the pawn on a6. Black goes d4. Mm-hmm. You could trade, for example. This knight goes somewhere terrible. This knight on c3. A4. I don't even know where to put it. It's god-awful. And then black plays d3. No, white's hosed. Maybe white plays something like knight a7 instead of moving the knight off of c3, Jesse.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Right? And then like takes on c3, takes on c8.
Also on knight a7, white can play rook a8, so it's, it's going to be a piece. Yeah. Okay, so that would be truly highfalutin a6.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very, very surprised because to me, it's positional suicide.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm going to give Gukesh props. This whole thing, my intuition rebelled against it because we're allowing rook a7 and yada yada. But now with the knight c4 idea, it's at least putting some powerful questions to white here about how to play.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ding should think for a few minutes.
Well, he needs an idea. We need to come up with an idea for our poor friend here.
I need some water. We'll let him think it over.
All right. Let's do this. Unfortunately, I can't move the pieces. They don't let me move the pieces. This is all Kostya's fault. But if we imagine AV, rook a7, c5.
Yeah. We'll play everything you're asking for. I hear you.
But by the way, David, don't we have the ability to share a board like back in the olden times when we had the share the analysis board kind of situation?
Yeah, we would just have to manually enter all the moves from the game onto that board.
Oh, that's not hard. Yeah.
And the board, wouldn't necessarily have Gukesh and Ding's clocks and stuff on it. So we would have to
But you know,
So you
just
just
like
see
we
that.
have two boards,
Yeah.
the one you would share with me would be the either like the small one or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah, yeah, and then we would just see the clocks maybe on the live board below. Could be. Yeah.
So something I want to say is now looking after this position with Rook A7, it seems like the Rook on A7 is just a chump after C5. Like he's not doing anything over there.
Yeah, I mean, he's not necessarily a full chump, but we can understand how black could tolerate it because it's not immediately impacting things.
Well, also just this D4 thing is a hell of a drug.
Right. So here, let's put the knight on b5 again. Play d4. Takes. Takes. I don't know where the knight on c3 is going, Jesse. I just have to move it out of the way to show people the pawn on d3. So I just get it out of the way so we can put this pawn on d3. And yeah, e2 bishop. Really unhappy. Really getting jammed up there.
And the Rook on A7 is not doing anything. And we don't even have to play D3, David. There's other
Right.
moves. I got Rook C2 and yada yada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
We're
rook c2,
also
bishop c2, rook e8.
we have displaced both of White's knights, and now they're both chumps. Oh, this is powerful. Okay. So yeah, one thing this is great to do without the computer is the computer, for example, might see a way for White to get play. And then to everybody watching the computer, it'll seem obvious that the position's equal or maybe even better for White.
Right. They'd be like, oh,
But if you
blunder.
don't,
White can put the rook on a7. You chump.
yeah. Or doesn't he see that A6 is genius?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, a6. Like,
But for me, or just looking at it, it's like, oh, all of a sudden, White's being asked some really, really cool, interesting questions here.
I think White's light squared bishop does want to go to a6 here, PB Corporeal, just to avoid the worst of c5 and d4. Black's rook goes to c7. As Jesse says, there will be a tempo with knight b5 at some point. I don't see anything specifically concrete for White, but it just has that feeling of like, well, you're still kind of messing with Black's coconuts too. You're messing around with Black. But bishop a6, I mean, an obvious thing would be that the a file's not worth as much with the bishop on a6.
No, I think if you play bishop a6, you better have an idea for your next move because I can then trap your bishop with b5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think a move has been made.
Oh,
Knight
really?
f3 was played.
Knight f3. Okay, a very simple move. Very simple move.
That's the move of a man who wants to get out of the train that's a coming.
Right.
You know?
Okay, so I don't think Gukesh wants to trade on f3, but I'm just going to play the move anyway. Knight f3, bishop f3, and now Black's being restrained from playing c5, perhaps by the move knight takes d5 for White. Perhaps with, pawn trades on b6 or c5 or whatever first, right? But I think this would be an improvement for the bishop on e2, who's been, I don't want to say like a chump this game, but he's kind of been lying in wait, waiting for his moment.
Yeah, actually,
He's been
I want to give.
flexible.
I think knight f3 is a good move because what we're seeing here is if knight c4, then White can just play d3 if he wants. If knight d3, I don't think the knight's. Well, that's the thing he's going to have to double check that knight d3 isn't doing anything.
Knight d3, yeah, that's a move.
I think we're going to move our knight on c3 somewhere, though, like knight a4, and I don't know what the knight does on d3.
Right
So
now
knight
it's
f3,
hanging. Straight up hanging.
yeah. Okay, so knight f3 was probably a clever move.
Yeah, it looks pretty decent. Seems to hold things pretty equal at the moment. Somebody called it a weenie move, Jesse. Would you call this a weenie move?
Well, first of all, it is a defensive move. And one sage piece of advice I remember in a game analysis was just like, you got this pawn storm potentially brewing on you. And then the best thing to do is just get the hell out of the way, man.
Mm-hmm.
Get the hell out of the way. And knight f3 not only gets out of the way, but like gives that knight on e5 some questions to answer.
Yeah. I think
Okay,
he's
so
going to
he
defend it
took.
with his queen, Jesse.
So
He
we're gonna
traded.
say, oh, wait a second,
He
David.
traded.
He traded. Now,
Yeah.
ostensibly, this looks good for white, but it is. We have to ask the question of bishop d3, and then how do we feel about that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bishop d3 looks playable. If you don't play bishop e2, then maybe he could play c5 once he gets the bishop there. No, there's
Okay,
still
so let's
d5
ask that
hanging.
question. Bishop f3 was played, and then let's ask on bishop d3.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's play a natural move first, like rook fc1.
Done.
Does this bishop do anything? That's probably not so special. Okay, so maybe bishop d3, isn't it? I can still do my knight e4 idea after bishop f3.
Mm-hmm. Here's something I don't really trust much, Jesse. Bishop c4, queen b2, c5. I'm no longer impressed by this pair of pawns particularly. I feel like the bishop on c4 is a little awkwardly placed, and the pawns aren't really
Well,
kicking it.
also, David, if I go back to d1, then I'm going to ask your bishop questions with d3 later.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to come up eventually, right? You want to do it immediately. Fine.
I don't know. I'm just saying I didn't understand bishop c4 either.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Anyway. Feels awkward. Moves on the board, they're saying? d4 was played immediately. And then knight e2 immediately. Wow. So now, Jesse, he could play c5 and link up the whole chain.
Oh man, that's early in the morning here, and I'm slow. I wasn't realizing what was going on.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll say this. He's continuing to play moves very quickly. They're trading on e3. I'll just point out d3, knight d4 looks bad to me because white gets the c6 square for their pieces. Even though d3 was a dream for me in another position. So he just makes the trade. And
I think he wants to play c5 and say he's got the passed pawn, dude.
I think he probably doesn't want that knight landing on d4 here, does he?
Well, right. So after white recaptures, we're going to play c5. We control d4. We have the passed pawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought he was going to play c5 last move, and Patricio says he could have won at Connect 4, Jesse, if he'd played c5 last move. Could have had it. That was sort of, I mean, this was happening very fast for us, actually, so we weren't keeping up with the moves, but my, 1 second instinct was that he would maybe play c5 there.
But I think here his instinct is now c5.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to say, I'm a little bit better. And I think it's kind of sort of true.
The speed with which they're both playing says that to them, the opponent's moves were not that surprising, which says that to them, the position was a little bit less nebulous than it was to us, right?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know
Is that too
about that.
much?
They had figured out, I think, when the Gukesh had foreseen knight f3 is basically what's going on.
Yeah.
And after d4, knight e2 is the only plausible move. Okay. So Ding, however, well, at least Gukesh is thinking a little bit on the c5 move.
Yeah, Gender Chess, I don't see why he would have traded the pawn here versus playing c5 first. As you say, trading the d pawns gives white rook d1 or the d file. Another thing about it is basically you can think of it in terms of which pawns are you trading. d4 for d2. The d2 pawn is kind of cramping white's game. And the d4 pawn, yeah, pretty good pawn.
So, dude, he doesn't play c5. That's what the chump GM wanted to do.
He plays a
Instead, just plays
simple
bishop
technical
e4.
move. I
And
feel
so
like he's playing for equality here, Jesse.
I don't know. The position might be equal, but I definitely don't think he's playing for equality. So with bishop e4, we're saying I want to get rid of your strong bishop, and my knight wants the e4 square, and I think I still want to play c5 soon. And I think black is the one anyway, if anyone's better, who can claim that he's got a little something something.
Well, no, white could say that they're going to attack your isolated pawn, right? You say it's a pass pawn, they say it's an isolated pawn.
Well, it's a pass pawn, and my rook is behind it.
Sure.
It'll be interesting. I'm willing to entertain the thought that Gukesh is just like, screw it. I want to go home, but I don't think that's what he's doing. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Oh,
God. Okay, we have a move. Rook fd1 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's pretty simple.
And one thing I was just trying to calculate is like, after rook fd1, let's say the natural queen e7, is there some way for white's knight to like hit me on f5? That was one of the things I was a little bit concerned with. And queen e7 was played. Yeah, these all came very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the guarantee of time trouble is not as clear here anymore, is it, Jesse? I mean,
well,
they got in some quick moves and some simplification.
If you imagine that you got 40 moves to make and you have 2 hours, well, they're still down, they're still headed towards time pressure.
Yeah, but it's
I think they
pretty
both
mild so far, right?
They both decided, hey, we cannot be tanking like we were on moves like 95 and 84, and we must start moving faster.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a little bit of an adjustment. Ding trades on e4. Gukesh recaptures. They're blazing, man. They're blazing. I mean, if they were exactly on schedule, they'd each have 57 minutes here. Exactly. And they've got a little bit less than that, but nothing dramatic. A position simplifies up sometimes, and, you don't have to tank 40 minutes on this kind of a position anymore.
Yeah, so I feel like, black is the one who has a dream still, but usually in these positions, like especially where white has, for the most part, active pieces, there should be a variety of ways for white to simply hold the line.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, let me ask you one question, Jesse. Let's say I play knight. Okay, even before I play knight d4, right? Let's say I'm going to play knight d4. Should I trade on b6 first or not, right? So basically the question is, if I go knight d4, c5, bc, bc, do I want a punt on the board as white, or do I not want them on the board?
The simple way to answer that question is, if you are just playing for to hold the position, then take the a pawns off.
Sure.
If you are dreaming about some kind of potential counterplay later, then keep them on. Yeah. I think the weenie move from white would be knight c3 here. f3 is also very plausible. We can decide later whether we want to take. We're no rush to take on b6 too.
Knight c3 definitely has that weenie sign on it. Some people were asking about, winning chances in the end games. And I would say of the remaining pieces, knight endings are the most winning, and rook endings and queen endings are the most drawing. So trading the knight would definitely be a step towards, I would say, increasing the drawing margin, right? Or
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying that right, but basically it increases the chances the game eventually ends in a draw if you trade knights.
While a very exciting match, if it's true that this just peters out here, all of our games have really been decided within 25 moves. Because game 3, I mean, even though it went on, I felt it was technically lost after that rook h5 move.
Yeah. Agreed. It was technically lost, and Gukesh showed the technique. He even demonstrated. There's another suggestion from chat to play f3, e4. You were suggesting f3. Is your intention to play e4 immediately, pretty much?
Well, it depends a little bit where the knight goes. Definitely if he goes to f6, I want to play e4 and cut the knight. And then like he's got other moves. Even g5 isn't so dumb because later e6 could be a good square for us. Yeah. Let me tell you what a weenie would do here, David. A weenie would play knight c3.
I know.
And let's just say knight takes, queen takes, c5. Then I go AB, AB, BC, BC. Then I play rook a4 to play rook c4 and rook c1. And I'm just going to say, I ain't losing that, buddy. Mm-hmm. I'm losing that.
Yeah.
Okay, AB was played. AB.
Yeah.
And unless he has some fancy intention like rook a6, which I doubt, he is now going to weenie this position down.
Right. This might be the better move order than what you first gave, Jesse, just because, I mean, I don't mean to quibble or anything, but after c5, AB, there might be pawn takes b4, right?
Okay.
So if you, as you were saying, if you want to draw, you're probably trading more pawns, right? So if you want to do the weenie knight c3, I think trading on b6 is a good prelude. And maybe then knight c3.
Yeah, fine.
But if you've got dreams, f3, e4 looks totally playable. And with knight d4, I don't really see anything amazing. Knight d4, I see black going c5, takes, knight f5, queen e5. And I don't really see... Oh, there's rook f5. I hadn't really seen the point, but because there's rook e5.
There's no rook e5 because of queen a1.
Okay, so there's nothing. I was going to calculate a complicated line with c4. Queen a1. Okay, so just queen e5, and I don't think the knight wandering through d4 is going anywhere, right? If that's the case, f3, e4 is one of the only ways to keep pressing, so to speak, from white. Not that white's been pressing at any point. There's also this move knight f4 saying if you ever play c5, I land on d5. That's the move I like, actually, so far.
A little weird to play AB and then think about it, right?
A little bit, yeah. Maybe Gukesh stepped away from the board for a second. I don't know. Then ran back.
Well, it wouldn't be Gukesh, right? It'd be Ding running away from the board.
No, I mean, if Gukesh had left the board, he could play a takes b6 without having his next move ready. To keep thinking on the opponent's time instead of his, but then, maybe you run back to the board. What do you think of knight f4, Jesse?
In this position, knight f4? Well, maybe. I think, honestly, white can do a variety of things, and that f3 would be the ambitious move. I'm gonna guess though. Actually, here's where just human understanding comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's gonna play knight c3 and play for the draw, buddy. That's
That's
what I think is gonna go on.
that's your ding tuition
My ding
speaking.
tuition. That's my ding tuition.
Yeah, I hear it. But can you give me any opinion about knight f4 just for my own curiosity?
So you want to play b5 next, right?
No. Just saying, hey, are you playing c5, buddy? Are you sure that you're playing c5, buddy?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You know, things I might do, I might put a rook on a6 next. I'm more likely I'll just play h3 next, honestly. Like I'm not rushing with this move.
Uh-huh.
But we'll see what you do.
I think you're fine after knight f4, and I don't know what to do either. I mean, you do a variety of things. I'm pretty sure c5 is also playable. Okay, so we do have a move, I think.
Yep, we
Knight
do.
c3. Who got his ding tuition correct?
Oh yeah.
Tausch
Jesse's
Machina.
intuition is
Tausch Machina, yeah.
right on.
Well, David. Yeah. And we believe that the rules are that you can offer a draw anytime, right? That's our understanding.
No, the previous draw was by repetition. Somebody said that they have to repeat before move 40.
Okay.
I think, and I don't know if that person was right or not, but that was the response of chat.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, for what it's worth, even though I think this position is equal, I would still rather be black. Because I got the pass pawn, and I can double my rooks behind it.
yeah, I mean, I'm actually going to increase my valuation, although it doesn't really matter. Because I think the chances of a draw right now, folks, like 99%, honestly. Just like percentage chance of a result. But, I thought the position was really zeros throughout. But now for the first time, I would say, okay, technically, it's just a little bit better to have the outside pawn once we're this far into the end game. So if
it's not true though, David. It's not true because especially because white could put the rook on a4 to c4, and then just triple. And his extra pawn on the king side's no chump. He could eventually create a little drama there. By the way, I think chess fans shouldn't just necessarily assume this is going to be a draw. Mistakes can still be made. And one of the things is back in the day, we would just agree to a draw. But now, if you do have to play to move 40, well, inaccuracies will be made. Yeah. And then we might still get some stuff going on. So, for example, in that position with knight takes, queen takes, and then c5, bc, rook a4, at some point, I might play rook g4 to inflict a little bit of a coconut touch.
You might go rook g4 at some point?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think black might even play rook c5 instead of bc5.
You could do so many things. We could play queen c5.
Yeah, we can do anything. You're right. Queen c5 is extra drawish as well, right? Taking queens off.
Yeah.
If black loses the pass pawn, can you win the resulting 4 versus 3? Not without some kind of inaccuracy from black at this point. The knight is the only piece remaining on the board that can win the 4 versus 3. And it's about to get traded.
Well, actually, that was a funny thing. So we had I had David Kostya play the 4 versus 3 in Endgame Sensei, and they were just oblivious to the fact that white had winning chances, and they were like, "This is just a draw."
Oh, come on, not oblivious.
They're just oblivious,
not
dude.
Oblivious.
They didn't understand the whole h4 h5 idea, dude, and it was just
Jesse, I had just discussed that idea with Sam like the week before. I had just been talking about rook and 4 versus rook and 3 with Sam Shankland. Just before that episode.
Okay, so one actually kind of maybe interesting questions. Probably not that interesting, but Black could play c5 right now and claim that if you then trade on e4,
Mm-hmm.
that's a mildly better version for me, which I think that's true.
Although you get your rook a4 move, maybe with tempo. And
No,
he's
no,
going
because
to
I'm
play
gonna see.
c4.
I'll c4 you. I'll
Yeah,
c4
okay.
you. But of course, the issue with c5 is you are allowing knight d5. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you don't care about knight
Rook
d5. I'm not
c5,
sure. I'm
knight
worried
d5.
about it.
Queen h4. Yeah.
Anyways, so
a3.
so that's maybe a thing for Gukesh to think about whether he wants to just take or play c5 right away.
4 versus 3 is winnable for the knight, but if people are really wondering, like rook and 4 versus rook and 3 with no weaknesses, Black would have to play inaccurately for you to win. It's not impossible. You should play it out, obviously, but just in terms of the theoretical verdict for those asking, Gary did lose a 4 versus 3 against Paquette. I think it was a rapid game, not a classical game, but he did lose it, yeah.
KGB is convinced he can beat players about 200 points below him with the 4 versus 3 almost every time. Is that true? I don't know. He says a lot of shit, you know.
Yeah.
That's a lot of smack, but I get the feeling. All right, rook fd8 is played.
That's a very peace-oriented move, right? He's just activating the last piece. He's saying if you're going to trade, you're going to put me in the middle of the board, right? So he's still playing, and Gukesh does a pretty good job of this, I think, Jesse. Like, even if you've got sort of a foregone conclusion on the board, like it looks obviously drawn or obviously won or something like that, he's still a maximalist in a pretty clean way, not like, you know, crazy stupid stuff. Just he keeps playing the best moves he can find.
All right, so then that's the full weenie approach. Just take and play h3.
Yeah. All right. So now, if they had the right amount of time, it would be 45 minutes each at move 25. They're doing very fine on the clock.
Oh, yeah, now the clock is truly... Yeah, now the clock's not a thing.
Here's a question, Jesse, from chat. Which is more drawish, rook and 4 versus rook and 3, or queen and 4 versus queen and 3? Which would be harder to outplay the opponent and win from? I feel like it might be even harder to win with the queen, but I don't know queen endgames in any detail. They're the endgames I've never studied, basically. I know them the least. I have the least practice with them.
You said that before, David, but then I told you the simple rule about the queens and the passed pawns, and you were like, oh, I know that. But then once you know that rule, then you say, oh, right, queen and 4 versus queen and 3. Is there a passed pawn or not?
No.
And in this case, there wouldn't. So then you'd be like, oh, it's probably going to be a draw.
I mean, I was confidently saying it should be a draw. The question is the practical chances for outplaying somebody in a drawn position. To me, the chances are slightly higher in a rook endgame, I'm going to say, folks, to outplay, because the queen ending just has so many perpetuals. It reduces your latitude for like grinding for a long time, I think, in the 4 versus 3. It's going to be my guess. But I imagine there's still some things you can try. I mean, your opponent can't trade queens because the king and pawn ending is winning, so you can take over prime real estate with your queen, and then you can try and push. And maybe more than with rooks, queens have prime real estate, right? Rooks are agnostic to being on the side of the board or in the center. The queen, it's a really big thing in queen endings to get a spot like Gukesh has here, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, so if I was black here, I'd take on D1 and probably play C5.
That looks very logical. Yeah, Wavelino, he's got a passed pawn, and the position's about equal. Maybe there's rook d7 in your line, Jesse?
Well, then I'm going to C4 you.
Okay, yeah, you've got no issues with that.
One thing, actually, we're talking about the queens and the rooks. If we have a situation with a passed pawn on the queen side, then definitely our best chances as black are with the queens. So if we could take all the rooks off here, then black, starts to have dreams for sure.
Yeah. By the way, Jesse, I like the fact that they can't just agree to a draw here. I prefer seeing a few moves from them. I like seeing like the really maximalist moves from Gukesh. I feel like often when the players are completely sure that they're drawing and they either just offer a draw or play really sloppy moves just heading towards a draw, you don't often get to see what the most precise moves look like in this kind of a position. And here's like a rare chance to see it from somebody who does seem to care about 1/100th of a pawn in an equal position.
I think, by the way, that on rook takes d1, maybe white's best is queen takes, so that if queen b4, I have queen d7, and if c5, again, like some kind of queen d7 idea. Because rook takes c5. Well, white, I'm gonna play c4. And I'll play c4 with tempo too.
Yeah. Now, if Gukesh played c5 without trading rooks, Jesse, you think white would trade on d8, trade on c5, and then go rook c1, and you don't control c4? Or what do you
There's
think?
that, and also the question, maybe he can get behind your passed pawn somehow.
Well, you can't get too fancy because you are ready to play c4, as you've pointed out, right? So, like, rook a7 is not going to be so good. Okay, what do you do? He played c5 without the trade. Okay. So, yeah, I would expect the rook trade followed by rook c1 to control the c4 square. I mean, with a trade on c5 as well.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't like that too much because you're going passive.
But yeah, I mean, the point is just to blockade the pawn before it gets too far, right? So like here, rook d8, trade on c5, rook c1. I mean, do you have to play rook c8 to defend your pawn? Because if so, then I'm playing queen c4, right? So I'm just keeping that pawn at bay.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem too passive. Like if black has to play rook c8, we're okay. Gukesh thought about 5 minutes on c5, right? Yeah, he cares about everything, this guy.
Got time.
Wavelino says trading on d8 allows rook to d3. So trades, rook c1. What does rook d3 do? Let's see if I can figure it out. I mean, the e3 pawn is not a soft target. It's well defended.
Yeah, rook d8 was played, bc.
Okay, so these moves are being played.
And if it was white, I would want to find, maybe there's nothing better, but there you go. Rook c1. Yeah.
C1.
So yeah, I think rook c8 is probably going to happen. Yep. Well, David. There it is. Oh, I need something to drink, folks. I need something to drink.
Yeah.
All right, David, I'm going to make a coffee. And we're going to come back, and if it's boring, we're going to talk about your Thanksgiving, your cold, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay.
Queen e5 was not on the list, so he leaves the rook on the open file for another move instead of going behind the pawn. Why isn't rook a7 winning? Paul's asking. Okay, we mentioned that like a minute ago, Paul, so I'm sorry for not repeating it, but against rook a7, black has the move c4. That blocks the queen from f7, but also the pawn starts to get closer to queening. And the rook on a7 is not good at controlling that pawn. So after c4, you know, you're playing a move like queen b2 or queen c3, something like that. You have to watch out for rook d1 as well, actually. Your queen has to stop the c-pawn, and rook d1 may or may not be pleasant for the peasant. So, I mean, I don't know that rook d1's the end of the world. Let's see. Somebody in chat gave it a double question mark. I mean, king comes to h2. What's the big deal? I don't know. I mean, you could play queen b1 going for an attack, sack this pawn. But I think the king's on the other side of the rook, so all you're doing is trying to give a perpetual with your queen. I don't think there's any winning here. It's not a real attack. Now queen c3, rook d1, check 0-1. Oh, maybe in the live position with black's queen on e5. Yeah, here queen c3 is definitely a trap. That's a basic tactic that J.K. Heidegg points out to us. The king can't go to h2, so you have to take the rook and then drop the queen. Oh, you were telling us about the same tactic, surrender if I. Okay, gotcha. I was into my variation with the pawn on c4. Okay, so queen e5 is live. You saw something in this variation here, Joao? After king g3, queen b8. I was looking for it and I couldn't see it. But I guess it doesn't really... I don't think I saw any of this somehow. Oh. Not in a very sharp calculation mode today. Yeah. So, rook c1, queen e5. Ding in thought. What would be a more normal move than queen c3, hanging the queen? Queen c4 looks like kind of a normal move, but you know, honestly, you don't threaten queen c5 because there's still rook d1 there, right? So, you know, Gukesh could play something like rook d2 if that's what's on his mind. So maybe white wants to play a move that doesn't allow rook d2. Maybe white wants to play like queen c2. Could queen b5 force black to play this? Because I think white does want to get Gukesh's rook off the d file, force him into a standoff around the c pawn. So let's look at this for a moment. Queen b5. I mean, I think he just can ignore it. That's the problem, right? He can play rook d2. And if you ever take on c5, there's rook d1. You know, and if you go g3, there's queen f5. Feels a little bit worrisome for white, no? So what did Ding come up with? He just played queen c2.
Queen
so
c2, simple
stopping
jabs.
rook d2. You know, little basic move. And now Gukesh doesn't have a lot to do to improve his position, but, you know, he might play like h5 or g6. Something of that sort. The idea of h5 would be that if white plays g3 to threaten the c-pawn, you can then play h4, but I think at this point white could... Could white play queen c5 then? King here, queen e4, f3, rook d2. That looks like we're getting ourselves destroyed.
White's not going to do any of that stuff, though. On h5, he's just going to play h4.
Just h4 himself,
Yeah. And it's a very simple process with queen c2 because we're saying you will eventually play rook c8.
Yeah.
And then if I want, I'll play probably queen c4.
Yeah. Or queen
and then
c3,
I'm as solid
queen
as
c4.
Yeah.
Solid.
Totally fine.
Yeah. Okay.
So David, I never met your uncle, dude. Is that from your mom's or your dad's side?
On my mom's side, yeah. I only have one uncle. Yeah, he's a character. My kids call him Funny Guy.
Funny Guy. Okay.
That's his name, Funny Guy.
Is he? I'm guessing he also has like an artistic proclivity.
Not like professionally, not like my mom. But he has something in common with you.
Oh,
actually,
okay.
The most interesting thing about, or one of the more interesting things about my Thanksgiving is you remember, maybe it was 2 years ago now, you asked me to write a rap song, right?
Okay.
You made a request. You said, write a rap song about the dojo.
Yeah.
It'll go viral, and then we'll have a lot of customers or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever, some other word for customer or whatever, right? People, dojoers. So yesterday, he asked me to write him a rap song about Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah, he said somehow like we'd never sent him any of my rap songs. He didn't realize it was a thing I did, and then, you know, he wanted to. He had an order, rap song about Thanksgiving. So, you know, I'm watching the kids and, you know, not sleeping enough. So I spent about an hour on it and wrote a rap song about Thanksgiving and performed it at the Thanksgiving.
Well, now you got to
table.
perform it for us, boss. Let's hear it, bud.
I don't know. I'm like so stuffed up, Jesse.
That's because you ate all that chicken or turkey stuffing, bud.
No, I'm stuffed up in my head with my cold.
David, take back your eval, by the way. Put it at 0. Give me a
0.
break.
I'll put it 0.05.
Just to be spicy.
I don't know. It could wake people. Do you really want to hear me like
spitting? Yeah.
Yeah, spitting. You do. All right.
Oh, they definitely want to hear it, dude. Your raps are famous.
It's not. It's less good, right, Jesse? Like it was only an hour.
Okay.
I don't even know it by heart yet. I just wrote it. Let's see.
By the way, David, I want to give you props, dude, for pulling through on all of these games because it's dark 30 over there for you. And Kostya, who is a millennial, a billionaire of time, he can't do it.
He probably spent some of his time on something else. I just, you know, just surviving through the pain like you.
Well, but I give myself a little, you know, you're here for the full thing. I get here a little bit late, you know.
That's a good call.
So you've been here. You've been here. I'm just trying to give you props, and you're not letting me, bud.
Yeah. No, thank you. It's nice. I've done a good job of soldiering through so far, right? But it's still early. It's 4 games in. You know, there will be days where I won't make it.
Okay. And
Okay.
now, are you also shafted like me, where your kids aren't going to school today? That's the first question.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, dude, I got the total shaft, dude.
They didn't have school on Wednesday either now.
Me either, dude. I got
Yeah,
shafted Wednesday,
that was new.
obviously yesterday, and today.
Some schools around here had Monday and Tuesday off too, but not my kids.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah,
Who are these people?
less and less school. Okay, you want me to try this?
Dude, Chad definitely wants
Okay.
to hear it at this point. Man.
Can you hear this sound here from the music?
Oh no, I can't hear any music.
Do you hear that or not?
Mm-mm.
You can't hear that?
Mm-mm.
Chat, can you hear music? I mean, when I turned it on, obviously I stopped it now, but
Oh, they can hear it. If they can hear it, I'll just turn on my Twitch and I'll listen through it through the Twitch,
okay.
and I'll mute my mic so it doesn't reverb.
So we don't listen to it twice.
All right, here we go. You go for it, bud.
All right. Listen to me, everyone. Back in 1621, there was snow, there was cold. They weren't sitting in the sun. Floors for beds, clothes were wet. Plus, the starving wasn't fun. Winter would have been the victor till there came the Wampanoag. Taught them how to fish and sow, gather shellfish, make crops grow. With direction and protection, they soon had a lot to show. When the summer turned to autumn, the poor settlers from the east could pause and thank the Lord they had a harvest feast. Searching for turkey in Berkeley can leave you berserk. We got freegans and vegans and all types of quirky folks who will tell you that killing is ethically murky. Rather serve you tofurkey than bacon or jerky. Though you may ask demurely, we'll look at you dirty, leave you thirsty or worse. We won't hurt the poor birdie. But back to the past, I am glad that you asked. Here is the story of Thanksgiving at last. A schism had arisen twixt England's Christians, enforced Anglicanism with fines and with prisons, some for freedom of... No. The Pilgrims decided they could not abide it, and fled from the fury of an England divided, pursued Puritanism, passing by Neptune's trident. They'd heard of a new world and thought they would try it, build a city on a hill that would shine like a diamond, a beacon for freemen to reach virtue's island. But they were surprised by the new and strange climate. Scurvy and frostbite would plague their asylum. Searching for turkey in Berkeley can leave you berserk. We got freegans and vegans and all kinds of quirky. Rather serve you tofurkey than bacon or jerky. Though you may ask demurely, we'll look at you dirty, leave you thirsty or worse. We won't hurt the poor birdie. So there were the pilgrims in winter conditions, without shelter, nutrition, or any physicians. The poor pilgrim children would have been the victims, but in an instant of giving, the Indians switched positions. And I hate to be a hater, but a few years later, these pious Christians went on to kill their saviors. And I know the pill is tough, but there's lessons in this stuff, so take your medicine, and please, listen up. It seems you can never be thankful enough.
There you go, bud. Now you're really exhausted.
I'm
there.
so gassed. I don't have any, like, oxygen. Oh, my God. Oh, that was a dismal performance. I'm really sick.
Oh, come on. That was great, Bose. That was
Better
great.
during the day.
Oh. Hmm.
Has the game ended during that?
No.
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 H5. No. No move played. He's been thinking for 10 minutes here.
That's okay. You know, I like it. I
Thanks.
appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Go Gukesh.
Oh, I have a question for you. I was going to ask Kostya too. So eventually, right after this ends someday, we'll return to our regular podcast schedule. And I was thinking it'd be cool to do some books.
Yeah.
Either they're books in the program. I also think it'd be cool to start doing some more like historical chess books, because if we do some historical chess books and we read them together,
Yeah.
we can reference a lot of the stuff in those books in like podcasts later than that, and then it'll give a little bit more texture. because we've referred to, oh yeah, that time we talked about Korchnoi or whatever, you know, it'll come up in other ones. Anyways, so I wanted to ask you, are there books either that you've read recently you want to talk about, or books you want to read and then talk about? And then chat could chime in if they have books
I
they want.
recently found a book that I had never read before, and it's in the program. It's the handbook of positional stuff by Gelfer.
Mm-hmm.
So I could maybe read that.
Okay. I think I did a review of that, but is there a particular reason that book came to mind?
Oh, because I got it and I wanted to read it, and it's in the
Oh,
program.
because you got it. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Miles wants us to read and discuss Lisa.
There we go. Yeah.
I think that would be a great episode. We could ask you how you feel about the book when you've at this point in your life, years later.
Yeah, dude, we're 11 years on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 11 years on, I think. Gender Chess wants to do Zurich over and over again.
Yeah.
How about any other ones on your radar?
Another book on my radar? Not really. I just like, you know, spending a year on some endgame book, you know. I've got all these Averbach endgame books to go through. Probably read Queen Endings at some point soon. I don't know if other people would want to hear us review it, but I have a big project I want to do, Jesse.
Okay.
Which is, and it's been mentioned before, so I mean, I don't know about, you know, your or Kostya's interest or priority on it, but I want to go over all of my best games, and I don't know if I should first do the video series on all my games and then have you guys do the video where we rank the games, or if you guys should first rank the games and then I could do the video series in order, sort of counting down towards the best game.
You've talked about this before, David. I have to say, for myself, when I try to think about my best games, it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't feel like something I want to do.
Really? For you don't have like a list of games that you love?
No,
No.
not really. Yeah, so that's why I can't, for myself, it's hard for me to understand get really pumped on the project.
Gotcha.
I think kind of if I was going to do something like that, it would be more like the Fisher memorable games. Like I definitely have games that are more memorable than others.
Oh, I've also been thinking, yeah, you can call it memorable instead of best if you want. I've also been thinking, sorry, to your previous question, I've been thinking about trying to get the Matthew Sadler book, Game Changer.
Uh-huh.
And maybe reading that. It's more modern than historical, but honestly, I'm more like lacking in the modern department than the historical department. So that's sort of
right.
I'm interested in learning a little more about computer chess.
There's a book also that came out. This that I don't know how good it is or anything, but it's by the guy who did Chess Vibes, and I'm spacing
Peter
out
Doggers, The Chess Revolution.
So he just came out with that book, and especially if it gets good reviews, that would be a good book to talk about, just because it would be a platform for us to discuss the changes in the chess world that happened recently, right?
Maybe we can also do a dojo talk. It's not a book to read together, but maybe we could do a dojo talk about Magnus's new app, Take. As a preview of that, I don't know what's up with that. I mean, he just merged with chess.com, and now is he like trying again? He tried Play Magnus, then he merges with chess.com, and is he trying to make his own thing again? Why? What's up?
Have you checked it out? Take.
No, of course not. I'm busy. I'm a dad. I don't check anything out, Jesse.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I had an idea and I've spaced it out already.
Now Gukesh is tanking.
Now he's tanking, yeah.
Rook d5, another maximal move.
He does play rook d5.
Yeah. He wants to go queen d6, then rook d2, and do something to you, right? I mean, that's Gukesh.
Ding just instantly played g3. He's not interested.
Yeah, he's like g3, h4, boy.
Yeah. Now rook d5, it can't be bad, but it doesn't look right. Yeah, it doesn't. Okay. Yeah, Ding's not playing though. He's like, dude, this is a draw. We should just agree it. Let's go home. Yeah. Well, David, I think this should be inspirational for you though, because you love this Gukesh boy, and he's still playing.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't care. He's still trying to
I would
mix
still
it
be
up
playing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So idea here, folks, queen d6, looking to force through rook d2. But after g3, you can no longer play rook d2 in some position like this, because the king can go to g2 or h2. So let's say white plays h4 or something. You go here. He can take, and now on rook d1, he ignores you.
Right. So yeah, the reason rook d5 really doesn't feel right is like, well, Mama first said that the rooks belong behind passed pawns, and then the other thing is you're never really threatening anything.
Yeah. Why not go home and rest? Spending energy seems unwise. I mean, it depends if you're spending more or less energy than your opponent, right?
Yeah, and Numke says that Gukesh wants to drain Ding's energy, and I agree. And I feel like since that was the case, he had other moves to mix it up, dude.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, I don't know how much energy this is going to drain. Ding is probably pretty comfortable just playing h4 and queen c4 and sitting around. That's the thing. I don't think it's taking a lot of energy. f5? Unexpected. Huh, Jesse? You didn't predict that.
Whoa.
Going on the attack. Planning to answer h4 with g5, followed by resigning shortly thereafter after blundering checkmate.
Now, let's just say f5 is still fine. You know, you're securing the fact that e4 can't come from white.
Mm-hmm.
But it is like KGB wouldn't like it. Let's put it that way. You are making unnecessary risks.
Yeah, and I agree with somebody in chat, Asher, saying that it's likely that Gukesh is spending more energy than Ding, right? He tanks for like 15 minutes and Ding is like G3. You know, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's playing a little risky chess here. Now, actually, what we could say is a dream for Black. Okay, there is a dream for Black, and that is someday White breaks, let's call it that word, breaks and plays Rook B1. I don't think Ding is ever going to do this, but we would like to induce dude to play a move like Rook D1. And then when we trade, then we claim we're a little bit better. In fact, we have real winning chances after that trade.
Oh, yeah. White does not want to trade the rook. White wants to just stay focused on c5 and keep Black's pieces from moving, right? That's the idea. Actually, I agree with this point in chat that someone said. I think basically I fully agree with what Tim is saying. An 18-year-old has infinite energy, period. I know it's an absolute statement, but yeah, I think that's basically true.
One thing, yeah, if I was playing a weaker player, I would start to get a little bit excited as White, because I would say to myself, well, don't I now have ideas like Rook B1?
Yeah. Get frisky, friend. Get frisky. And then G4 at some point. So you would not even be in a rush to complete your H4 setup after seeing F5.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't need to play H4 anymore.
Right.
Yeah, this is getting a little frisky.
Yeah. Wait, we've got an 18-year-old saying they don't have infinite energy? Only physically infinite, not intellectually infinite. Okay.
Yeah, and just to stress, like let's say I play rook b1. If black just wants to end the game, queen e4 is going to really end it because like snip snap, even if you go rook c4, he's got rook e5 and there's nothing doing. So one further idea of f5 is if I ever need to, I can play queen e4 in that position and I will just be completely fine there
Right.
too.
So if I go queen c4, well, this is a bad example of playing queen. No, I guess it's okay. So I'll just put this endgame on the board. Here, the e4 pawn keeps black from getting in trouble with the isolated c pawn. The white king can't get into any kind of attack here.
Yeah, and there black does have a dream too. If I get my king to d5 someday, then maybe I got a little something something.
Mm-hmm.
So f5, it's a little weird move. It's frisky, but he's got some ideas.
Yeah.
He thought about it, dude. He came up with some ideas. No, that's props.
Okay, we've got this question from Nicolas Zalamea. I think we can just answer a few random questions here and there. I feel that my endgames are trash, and while playing them, I'm full of doubts and overthinking. But if you look at the results, it looks like my strong point. So my first reaction to that, Nicolas, is that maybe if you have more doubts and more questions and more things you're thinking about, it could be a sign that you're good at it. Or not necessarily that you're good at, but better than other things, right? That you know what's going on. We sometimes see in the annotations to games that students submit to the dojo, students who will annotate one phase of the game and not another phase. And the phase of the game they're annotating, they might be full of questions and doubts and things they're not sure about, but at least they're thinking about stuff, right? They've got some ideas, they're working with something. And the phases that they just kind of leave blank, I mean, you have to imagine they're probably playing those phases worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just don't really know the first thing about them. Well, Wavelino, I mean, rook b1 looked reasonable to Jesse and I don't think it was probably a bad move. I mean, I imagine white doesn't have anything winning yet, but I mean, not that Gukesh would necessarily want to do it, but against rook b1, one thing he could play would be queen e4. And
he played king h7, which is again another provocative move.
So now he plays king h7, inviting g4.
Yeah, truly inviting it.
Is there a Black Friday code for the dojo? There is,
yes,
Carlos.
There is.
It might be like WC 2024. Like
it's
WC,
not might be. It should be coming up. By the way, boss, this template that you got, Gukesh. I'm really lost. DM has a template for us where that thing with the WC pops up.
Oh, especially for the World Championship?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see that. The probability of draw W Reynolds, 99%. Well, maybe it's down to 95. Gukesh is playing f5 and king h7. That's pretty frisky.
Yeah, I like the way Ding is just playing this like an old timer. He's not interested in g4 or anything. He's just gonna sit on the position, real sweet. I think he's proving himself a nice old man here. He's not interested in any of this garbage.
And he's not wasting any time either, right? He's just playing his move.
Yep.
Gukesh is still calculating. His eyes are flying all over the board, Jesse.
and with king h7, you're the one taking risks, and you have to calculate g4 and yada yada, and white's pieces are just totally harmonious, so there's nothing. It's wrong to expect that you're going to be able to do something to the two.
Yeah.
How's your swimming quest going, dude?
Um, well, I can't go swimming while the kids are on vacation. Um,
Oh man.
I I've been improving a little bit still, but it's a little. I think my progress has slowed a little bit, and I could use some advice from somewhere on how to get better. But I also don't worry about it. About I also don't need to improve. Like I'm still enjoying just going and like trying to get better. Just going down, getting the swim in. It's still just fun on its own. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um. Yeah. Every now and then I've knocked like a couple seconds off. Sometime on the short ones I can't. I'm totally stalled on like 50 meter. I can't get a single second off it anymore. But like the longer times, I'm still improving my endurance a little bit, right? On the bigger distances.
So here we got e4, very simple chess. This invites rook d4, queen takes, queen rook takes, and pawn takes e4 with a more than a dead draw. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think black at this point probably should do something like rook d4 because you don't want to mess with it. You don't want to mess with it because your king now is a little bit loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
You don't want to play. You don't want to mess.
Yeah, I mean, if you go fe4, queen e4, you can't block. You're playing like king back. Now rook b1 or rook a1. Sorry, it's better here. I mean, why are we doing this? Madness. He's done something. He played rook e5.
It's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with rook e5.
So he's just gonna take back on f5 with the rook.
Yeah.
And against queen e4, play queen g6.
Something like that, yeah. Or queen d5, you know, you've got moves. And the other thing we got to say, we were talking about the 4 versus 3. 4 versus 3 with the rook, generally thought of as a draw, but you can beat a weaker player. 3 versus 2, you got no chance.
Mm-hmm.
not even against the weaker player. You got nothing, those.
Yeah. Yeah, Blib it's been I've been able to swim for a long time, so it's not really about drowning.
Oh, dude, I didn't know this. They're telling me interesting news. Shaba won the 50-plus senior, dude.
Yeah.
Finished below me at the U.S. 50-plus senior, but then wins 50-plus senior, Bobs. That's pretty cool. That's pretty good. That was I know there was a lot of old-timer GMs in there, too.
Yeah.
If I didn't have kids, that's where I would be, dude, playing all over.
My swimming quest, one good riddance. My swimming quest, I'm swimming freestyle, and I took all the distances that I could find records in. My pool is in yards, so they're basically like NCAA records, more or less, you know, U.S. records. But I took all the ones I could find, like 50, 100, 200. 400, 1,000, 1,500, something like that. I took all, or maybe 500, 1,000, 1,500. I took all of those records, and my first goal was to swim half as fast as the fastest record holders. That I was able to do. It's basically how fast I was without any training, more or less. And then the goal is to cut 25% of the distance of the difference between my speed and the record speed, so to go basically 75% slower than them instead of 100% slower. Do I also have a fever? Maybe. I might. It's quite possible. 50-50. My freestyle is good. It's not that good. I couldn't swim a 50 and 28. I'm stuck at like, 34, and I just can't get it to go any faster.
Dude, Ding don't play, man. Ding, don't play. Now, do you go for the cheapo merchant here with Queen G6, or do you play Queen D5? Queen D5.
Queen
There
D5.
we go. So now,
Played.
this is where honestly, it doesn't necessarily offend me, but you know, this is back in the day. This is the example of back in the day where people should just agree to a draw. You know, they should just be, all right, boss, it's over. You got me. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, gender chess. Obviously, I'm not competitive. I've never been on a team. I think I have like basically decent technique. You know, I learned as a kid and taught swimming lessons at the local pool and all. And I train basically Monday through Friday. I train pretty hard given that... Oh, Dylan, hey. So you know my swim. You've seen my swimming. Yeah, so I mean, I'm training 30 to 60 minutes Monday through Friday. That's the time I have with the family and chess and other things. So.
But you got hosed this week, huh?
But I got hosed this week. Yeah, I only had like one day without the kids or something. Well, I'm just hosed by the World Championship match, honestly, because I guess the kids were in school on Monday or Tuesday or something like that, and I just slept, right? On Monday, I just slept. I didn't go swim. And then on Tuesday, I'd scheduled a classical game, so I didn't swim or sleep. But yeah, the distances I swim, I'm timing myself at 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 1,500. But on a normal day, I swim about 2,000 yards of training.
I made good progress on my little weightlifting quest.
What's your quest? Like, how much are you trying to get?
There's this app I've got, and it's a little bit like our Chess Dojo app in that, in the same way we've got buckets, it's got buckets for like strength and speed, endurance, that kind of thing, and it gives you a number just compared to other people. And so I'm just like, well, obviously I'm just going to try to get my number up. It's like a rating.
Right.
Everybody else in my gym is like, that's dumb. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm a chess player, boss. I need some numbers.
That seems pretty...
I need some numbers, man.
That seems pretty obvious. What?
But like I have ankle problems, and I was having trouble getting depth on the squat, so I've like made progress there. That's amazing. And then I had a period where I was stuck at a weight on the deadlift, and I just blew past it, dude. I blew past it, and I feel like there's a whole new vista. So imagine like, yeah, you're at your swimming quest, and you're at the same number forever, and then for whatever reason, you just, boom, you break through it. Very satisfying. Yeah. Now, this would be a great spot for them to just play Rook D5, King E4. Yeah, here we go.
Oh, sorry. The pool is 25 yards. So if I swim 80 laps, it's 2,000 yards. So I'm swimming 2,000 yards ish. Sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. Looks like this is ending here. They made time control.
There it is, dude. This is draw.
Yeah.
It is draw.
Okay.
I thought, even though it was a draw, the first phase of the game was very spicy. Very spicy indeed.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll just say, David, I'm gonna confute you a little bit, because you like to talk about how opening theory necessitates some kind of Fisher random stuff. And let's just say, dude, this was like, we're just playing chess.
Sure.
Just playing chess, dude.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, like this position with knight e5, where he thought for 20 minutes. that was a hell of a drug, man. That was a lot to think about there.
Yeah. 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 Get some sleep, Gender Chess. And anybody else in the U.S. who's like watching chess in the middle of the night, get a little rest, folks. Be good for you.
Yeah. And join the dojo. Join the dojo. David doesn't like to yell at. I'll yell at. If you type in WC 2024, as long as this match continues, you can get 20% off the dojo. And the dojo, man, we're doing interesting things. We like, feels like every month or two we get an innovation, a training innovation. And our latest is the heat map. I have to do a video on it. It's just this cool. It just looks awesome, dude. It just looks awesome. And so that's just a way to track what you're doing. One of the many things. Yeah, we're doing cool things. And it's like, imagine it this way. It's like you got senseis like me and David that don't know anything about tech, but we have ideas. And then we talk to the dev team, and then we scream at each other for like 2 months straight about what the little details should be. People getting pissed, people throwing stuff. But then at the end of the day, we do come up with a product that looks pretty cool. You know?
Yeah. And our coverage of the tournament, the World Championship, continues with round 5 tomorrow at the same time. So we got round 5 tomorrow. Then I think we've got round 6 the day after. And then there will be another rest day every 3 rounds.